All right, I think we are live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend here. Thanks so much for stopping by. So like all the other usual live streams are going to go for about 2 hours or so. I'll give priority answering. Then anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames, they get that priority answering. You also can get that if you are a member. And I see we have Theodore, Brian, Steven, Kevin, B. Mitchell, and Linda, Lanswath, Anthony, Vishal, Lantern Tales, and Jazz, and Luke. And yeah, so thanks so much for stopping by, everyone. And I see Theodore says he just saw a Ford Raptor R. It was massive in flat black. Oh, that's a cool combo. I don't think I've ever seen one in flat black. That must have been very stealthy. It's like Batman's off-road vehicle or something. That's cool. Let me see. Steven says, well, my dad might be getting a 2025 Kia EV6 this week. Nice. Well, sounds like he's warming up to it then. I'm happy that hopefully the deals are still good on them and that, yeah, he's able to get one. That's great. Let me see. B. Mitchell says, evening. Interesting spots this weekend around Sioux Falls, South Dakota are mostly still Corvettes. This time I saw a few more C6s and C7s, even running with a new C8 blue Z06 from Iowa. Nice. The odd duck was a fly yellow last gen Toyota MR2 with a rear wing half the size of the whole car. Interesting, because a rear biased mid-engine car needs that much more downforce. Yeah, right. I don't think you really need that, but I guess style points maybe. That's interesting. The other interesting car incident today was when I was at the store loading my groceries into the trunk of my 2019 Mustang GT. A couple walking by commented, "You can get more into that than a new Bronco." My reply, load it like a box car, drive it like a stock car. Good reply. And yeah, people don't give, I mean, even, yeah, Mustangs are pretty practical, all things considered. And then, yeah, that's one of the things I love about this new Charger I just covered this week. You can fit an enormous amount of stuff in that hatch and, huge interior. And, yeah, I wish more people would give it a shot. They just, from the outside, they still look like they don't have that much space. And then, you actually do a little investigation there and you can see it's, quite the space. And yeah, so that's awesome. Glad you're able to load up the Mustang there and enjoy it as a daily still, B. Mitchell. And let me see. Everyone else saying good evening. I hope everyone's having a good evening too. Lancelot says good evening, and I hope everyone's having a great week. My spots this week were a black R35 GTR, nice, a 1970 Plum Crazy Challenger, and a 1970 Red Challenger, very nice. And Anthony says he saw a Ranger Raptor today, and it seems like a more manageable size than a regular Raptor. Absolutely, yeah. I've been wanting to review one of those because I think they're great. I mean, they're also priced really well. I don't remember the price difference off the top of my head, but I think it's something like $6,000 or $7,000 cheaper than the Tacoma TRD Pros, since they're now almost like 70 grand. And it's like the Raptor is like more capable and faster. And I'm like, maybe they're hard to get still, but if they are plentiful on dealer lots, it's like, why would you not just get a Ranger Raptor? Most likely. I mean, again, I haven't driven it, but just on paper, it seems like it'd be better. And Ford's just so hard to get press cars from. So, but yeah, I agree. It would be more manageable. And I mean, because I love regular Raptors, but that capability and vibe with a smaller size sounds fantastic. Yeah, and nice spot. I don't think I really saw anything. I did see like an old Nissan Sentra with a huge wing on the back earlier this week. That was interesting. Other than that, I don't think I really saw anything notable. I mean, I was on Tail of the Dragon. There was a nice couple of WRX STIs on Tail of the Dragon there. But there wasn't really anything exciting. There's like a Cayman, a Boxster. The Boxster is kind of nice. It was silver with the red top and the red interior. And then I saw a pink Macan. And actually, there was someone who had a Continental GT that just looked like it was like 30, like a regular daily driver Continental GT that was at the one like common spot at the end of the Tail of the Dragon. They're just kind of parked up. So that was kind of nice to see. Oh, and also at the end of the Tail of the Dragon, now it's all coming back to me. Sorry. There was someone who had an Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio in the green color that came for this like last, model year or whatever. So one of the final editions of that car. And that thing, I pulled in the Charger and I saw that and I'm like, that is the car for Tail of the Dragon. Like, man, with a quick steering of the Giulia, That man, whoever was driving that, like that, they're doing Tail of the Dragon right. It was impressive in the Charger, and I have to commend Dodge for the confidence to say, "Hey, look, let's put this, almost 5,000 pound coupe on, the windiest road in the country, most likely." But it handled itself really well if you watch the video. And I also want to thank all of you who encouraged me to go on that trip, because if you remember, I brought up a month or so ago, hey, I got an invite to this Charger 6-pack. I don't know if anyone's going to really care about the 6-pack version. Do you guys think I should go? And I was kind of leaning towards not going. And you guys were like, and I did a poll, and you was like, yeah, I'd watch that. Like, that, I'm curious to see it. And so that was actually the push that made me decide, like, okay, like, I'm going to take a chance on this. And that video has done very well. It's over like 11,000 views now in like 2 or 3 days, which is a very strong performance for me. It's not quite as good as the RAV4. That one's like 34,000 views for the XSE, but it's much better than most reviews have done this year. So thank you all for the encouragement and for supporting it and also watching it as well. Because YouTube always says on a lot of the stuff, subscribers are watching longer than usual, and they're enjoying the video and clicking on it more often than other videos that are offered to them and all that kind of stuff. So thank you all for the encouragement and for watching. And like always, the entire success of this channel comes down to you guys, and without your support, it would cease to exist. And so I thank you all so much for that. So it's been great to see that video doing well this week, and it was a really fun opportunity too. So I'm glad I went. And so I'm very thankful for the support and the encouragement from all of you. And Lansfoth, also speaking of support, thank you so much for gifting 10 memberships. I really appreciate that support as well. And happy to see there's some familiar faces there, and also I think some new ones as well, able to get those memberships. So thanks so much, Lansfoth, for that. And hopefully maybe some of those people are here and able to chat in the live here tonight as well. But thank you all so much. And thank you, Lansfoth. And let me see here. So where were we here? Vishal says his spot today was an MR2 Spider as well. Interesting. Yes, the weather was nice enough that the guy had the top down. Awesome. That's great. I really like the MR2s. I needed to revisit one because whenever I reviewed it like 10 years ago, it felt really slow to me, and I just didn't really appreciate it. But I think these days I appreciate slower cars a little bit more. And the quirkiness of the MR2, I think, is even more special now than it was 10 years ago, in my opinion. I'd like to revisit that one because I think I was a little harsh on it in the first drive. And I think, like that one that I drove was basically stock. And I think stock, they might be a little underwhelming, but, you put an exhaust on it, you put some stickier tires on it. Maybe you put in some sportier springs and stuff so it doesn't feel quite as ordinary in the handling. And I think it would get a lot more fun too. So, seems like a fun option these days, because we're also going to get a reliable mid-engine convertible, even if it's not a lot of power. It's just still really a cool package, And Lantern Tail says he saw a Jeep Commander today in silver. Nice. I was actually talking to one of my extended relatives here that was in town. And they said that they had, I think it was either the Commander or actually, no, it was the Comanche. I'm getting confused with the Comanche, the old Jeep truck. And they loved it. They said it was like indestructible. You saw a Commander in silver. That's interesting. He says, funny thing is, whenever your junkyard videos come out, whatever cars you say you don't see anymore magically appear on the roads I drive on. That's funny. I wonder if that's, again, the same, whatever. There's a psychological phenomenon that, like, whenever something is brought to your awareness, then your brain usually would filter that stuff out, but then highlights those things because you were, had a heightened awareness for it. And then you see things that maybe you never, or that you think you never see, that you actually do see a bunch. I think because a lot of people experience this phenomenon whenever they're car shopping. And, for example, whenever I was really pining for a Mustang back when I had the BRZ or the Mini, once I was really starting to be obsessed with, like, oh, I really want a Mustang, like, I would see Mustangs everywhere. And I'm like, this is crazy. But, like, I think I always saw Mustangs everywhere. It's just that it was more notable once I really got stung by the Mustang bug or whatever. And I think, a lot of people will say this, like, I test drove a, you name it, whatever car. And then you start seeing them everywhere. And I think it's very much there. It's amazing the stuff that our brains do, and just the filtering and the stuff that you don't even realize it's doing all the time. It's wild. The brain is so much more powerful than I think we give it credit for. But anyway, um, so yeah, I mean, and it could just be that maybe there is some magical quality to the stuff that I speak into existence that then it magically is the opposite and goes on the road whenever I say it's not on the road anymore. Um, and but Vishal says same here. Actually, that's funny. He says I also see cars on the road. He says he doesn't see anymore, but I also don't live in the Rust Belt, which is also why. Yes, there is certainly that differentiation. That's a good point, Vishal, for sure. A lot of stuff up here ages out quicker. And I do kind of observe this whenever I am, out in California or any other place in the country, basically, especially the western half. When I'm on trips and stuff where I see stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't see those very often in Pittsburgh or the East Coast in general. And yeah, it's just stuff lasts longer, out there without the salt. So there is certainly some of that too. So I think, yeah, and that's kind of why I like calling it, relics of the Rust Belt. Because I think it is kind of geographical with the kinds of stuff that are in junkyards. I think in a lot of other junkyards in like and the Rockies and all these other places, it's a very different kind of vibe. You either see stuff that's a lot older, or you see different things that maybe aren't as desirable in those areas that are more desirable in other parts of the country, or whatever. There are geographical differences for sure. So but I think it also is a good way of kind of documenting what the Rust Belt area, why it's called that, because it's very much with this salt. You see stuff in more depreciated conditions than you do elsewhere in the country. So it's fun. But that's funny though. You guys have to let me know if that continues to be a phenomenon that you experience. Because yeah, it's funny. It's a lot of things I don't see them very often. I mean, I will also say it also comes down to the areas that you live in, because I mean, I do live in an area where a lot of cars are newer, where I mean, I'm not far. I'm only like 20 minutes from the city, but I'm not often like in the city or in some of the lower income areas where those things maybe cling on a little bit more. Like a lot of that I don't see. I'm always seeing, I mean, we have all the, pretty expensive dealers. I got a Bentley dealer, 15 minutes from my house. There's a lot of that, kind of stuff around. So I think that also filters out a lot of the older stuff. So I probably have a very skewed perception of what is on the road these days. But again, I mean, I see stuff elsewhere, and it's not like I never leave my little suburban bubble here, but I think there's some of that as well. So I guess take it with a grain of salt whenever I say I never see these things on the road, is that I don't see them in my upper middle class bubble suburb of Pittsburgh here. So I guess a lot of other places, yeah, it's just there's no reason to see older stuff in my area because it's just not common. I mean, even like the teenagers around here are typically driving one or two prior generation, Civics and Mazda 3s and, things like that aren't really super old or super cheap. So yeah. But thanks for pointing that out. That's funny. And Jazz says there are already 6 thumbs up and it hasn't even started yet. Loyal Matt followers. And I appreciate everyone that, thumbs up and shares and comments and all that stuff. It always helps for sure. And Luke says, I probably won't be on long. Have to get up at 5:30 tomorrow. I'm in Willington, Connecticut. Interesting. Well, I hope you're enjoying Connecticut. Hopefully the weather's decent there. It's been super windy here the past couple of days and really cold wind too. Like the temperatures don't seem that bad, but then like you go outside, it's like, ooh, like it's like full-blown winter with the way the wind is kicking up. So hope you're doing all right there, Luke. And yeah, totally get it. Hope you have a safe drive tomorrow with your early start there. And Jazz was complaining that I was a couple minutes late here. Apologies, Jazz. And let me see. Vijal says Honda Prelude is priced at $43,850. Is that official? Wow. That's even, if that, I'm assuming, you got that somewhere credible. And I mean, the rumor was like 40,000 already. And I thought that was bad enough, but if it's actually 43.8, I don't know if they're seeing, I know that it was sold out in Japan and maybe they foolishly thought that the same was going to happen here in the States. I don't think that's gonna happen. Is that really the price? That's so disappointing. Sorry, this is me processing that in real time. There's no way to defend it. I mean, what is that? That's 3 grand less than a Type R, unless Type R is going to get a giant price jump. I mean, I think 2026 pricing is probably already out already, right? So, I mean, what are they thinking? I mean, unless there's gold bars in the trunk or something, like, why is it 43? It's 100 less horsepower, most likely, than Type R, and it's what, $3,000 less? What are they thinking? Like, are they actually trying to, like, kill it to prove a point or something? Alright, I'm just gonna let that one marinate because I have so many questions that are gonna go unanswered forever, I'm sure, but, um, yeah, that is probably the worst example, or I guess the best example of horrible pricing I've seen in a long time. I can't think, at least in the past 5 years, of something that was priced that badly, if that is truly the price. Well, it was fun while it lasted with that one, I guess. That's gonna be worse than the Z. Holy crap! And speaking of Z, you can get a Z for $40,000. Now it doesn't have a limited slip diff, but who cares? You're what, double the horsepower of a Prelude. Man, I need to like text Beth and have her bring in some whiskey for me after that news. That's jeez. Oh man, I'm just melting down in real time here. Anyway, I may actually text her now or do that. So, is there? Can everyone verify that? Autoblog published an article with the pricing. Jeez. Okay. Well, I mean, I know Autoblog is like half AI these days, but there are a few humans still working there, so I'm assuming that is been verified and is the real price, and not just like the converted JDM price. Because sometimes they do convert, and that's part of it. But that's that is so disappointing. Oh, thank you, Vishal, for letting me know and for the extra context there. But yeah, you know what? I'm gonna text Beth here. Give me a second and see if she can bring me in some whiskey, because I think that is news that deserves a drink. But all right, we will start some drinking in honor of the idea of Prelude that all collapsed in real time here. Anyway, we'll move on here until the whiskey arrives. But Luke says, I saw 2 Super Bajas last week rotting in someone's front yard. I also saw a black Honda S2000 with flame decals down the side. Interesting. Those are all very funny. The Bajas are sad because, I mean, they had 2 of them. Clearly, they were fans of them, but then they're not taking care of them and just letting them waste. Maybe I guess they're parts cars or something. But man, that was always one of the fun things I'd love to have as a Baja, just as like a beater. Like if I needed a winter beater, that'd probably be one of my go-to picks, is to just give it a Baja. But they've kind of gone up in price now. They were hovering like under 5 grand briefly, and at that price, it's like, yeah, I don't care how beat up it is, just great winter beater, and you don't have to care about it. But now I think they're more like 7 or 8 grand, and then I mean, it's still cheap, but like, if they're starting to appreciate, then it's like you probably don't want to beat them up anymore, because they may actually become a collectible or something if they're starting to go up in value. But yeah, and Jason says, long time no see. And yeah, happy to have you here, Jason. Thanks for stopping by. And Chadwick as always says, hi, Matt. Hope you're having a great weekend. Hope you've had a good one too, Chadwick. Thanks for stopping by too. And Dozier, thanks for stopping by. And Lantern Tail says, went to an auto show and saw a Toyota GR Corolla. Nice. I hope it was a fun spot. And hope you're able to maybe sit in it and check it out. And I guess everyone can get a head start on me on the drinking here until mine arrives with the first GR Corolla mention of the night. And Dave says, hi, question for Matt. What do you consider the first supercar? For me, it's the 500 SL Gullwing. That's a good question. I think I'd have to agree. So there's the 300 SL, the one, I have a little die cast of it. Yeah, the 300 SL with the gullwing doors. I think that would probably be kind of considered the first supercar. But to me, like, I don't like that still is kind of sports car range. I don't know. I mean, performance wise, historically, of the context, it might have, kind of been a super performing car of its time. But to me, I'd say the first like supercar, I mean, true supercar, I'd say would be Countach, as far as like a really wild thing that's really exotic feeling. Because even like, the Ferraris before that, even the Lamborghini Miura and the, 350 GT, or what is it? Was it the 3500 GT or whatever the first Lamborghini, even those like, they're nice grand tours, but I don't know. Miura, I could kind of argue it both ways. They're fantastic and they're wild cars. I filmed a ride in a Miura a long time ago. You can check that video out on here if you've never seen that. So I have experienced a Miura. It is very cool. But I think for me, it would have to be Countach. Maybe a bad answer, but to me, I think that's, in my mind, that's like the first like standout, like wild car like that. D. Tommaso Pantera, you could maybe make a case for as well, possibly. But that's less exotic since it was using a Ford motor. I mean, you could also say Ford GT40 in a way. Also, I guess supercar level. So yeah, maybe let me revise my answer. Maybe Ford GT40, possibly, and any other race car derived car like that. But I don't think anyone else really sold theirs, as far as a road car version in decent volume. I'm a little foggy on some of that historical stuff, especially the European stuff, to say for sure. There's probably some others I'm missing, but that would be kind of my top answers there. Great question. Thanks for asking, Dave. And Luke says, I honestly like the inline six Charger. I don't care that it's not a V8. I'm curious how the 420 horsepower model will drive. Yeah, I mean, it should be great. I mean, that Hurricane motor is a beast, even in, the Rams. I did the standard output. I drove that briefly and the high output on the the launch for the Ram. And even in the Ram, it moves really well. So you put that in a smaller car. I mean, it's going to be great. In any way you look at it, I mean, even that regular RT is going to be much punchier than the old RT. With that, was what, 370 horsepower with that basic, for the 5.7 V8, I think. So I think it's going to be a really nice option too, again, for people that are fine with a six-cylinder sound. And the other thing too, I mean, Dodge has said there is, I believe, a little bit more going on with like cooling and stuff for the high output motor. But I think, don't quote me on this, but I think my recollection, whenever I was discussed, or whenever we were getting presented by the engineers, whenever the Hurricane motors first were coming out for the Ram and everything, people were asking the differences between standard output, high output. I think the internals are the same. So the thing I'm thinking is that RT could be the tuner special, because if you're getting the same stuff basically as the Scat Pack, and you can just put a tune on it, then you get that huge power level, very easily and cheap, $5,000 cheaper. Thank you, Beth, for. Oh, you're gonna pour it for me? All right, we got Matt Remoting glass and off-camera Beth here to pour it. Don't go crazy. I don't need a ton, but just we need to have a drink because
5 fingers?
No, let's do 2. That'd be plenty, I think.
Is that enough?
Yeah, you're good. Thank you. Man, full service. I was not expecting that. Thank you. Do you want to make a hello?
Cheers to yourself.
This is, by the way, be careful. I don't want to dump this. This is, by the way, this is good stuff. This is the Balvenie Caribbean cask, gifted to me, Scotch whiskey there. So thank you. Very smooth.
My dad?
I think so. Yeah, probably. So yeah. Are you gonna, there you go. There she is. Thanks for stopping by.
Okay, well, I don't know if I should come back.
Okay, hopefully I won't need a refill. We'll see. Thank you. So yes, rip to the Honda Prelude appeal. And it was nice while it lasted. And I guess since we mentioned your Corolla one time, we'll do.
Sir, another?
No.
Okay.
I'm not drinking it that fast. Thank you. But and then one for the Jack roll, I suppose. It's really good stuff. It's been a while since I've had that. Anyway, so this is going to be one of the more interesting live streams here tonight. So I may get even more tangenty than I usually do. So apologies in advance. But anyway, so but yeah, I feel like RT could be tuner special if you can do the same tunes and make the same kind of power gains as the Scat Pack. Yeah, or do 1,000 horse or $1,000 tune and then get Scat Pack power for $4,000 less, than paying the $5,000 more for Scat. I don't know. Could be an angle there. I don't know. We'll have to see, when the aftermarket gets their hands on them. And Vishal says you don't always need SUVs. Sedans and coupes can be practical too. Absolutely. I wish more people realize that, and I will do my best to champion that as much as I can. I'm hoping to get a Scat Pack charger, the gas one here for a week. At this rate, with the way my schedule is going, this will probably be early January, which will also be fun because it'll be showing up on all season tires, but it'll be all-wheel drive, obviously. And I'm hoping that I get some nice snow in January. I can drive it in the snow, show what it does in snow, live with it for a week, and put the car seat in the back of the two-door, and you see how it can be a family car, even as the two-door version, if you don't want to go for the four-door for whatever reason. Load it up with stuff, blaze through the snow in it, and just how I can just do it all. I really think it probably will be able to. Might not be the best in the snow, even with the all-wheel drive, because you do have really wide tires, and that's usually not something you want on a good, all-season kind of car. But it should be good, at least with the all-wheel drive. We'll see. But anyway, and Dozier says 2025 Mustang EcoBoost at a dealer 2 hours from me is $9,000 off MSRP. Cheapest is $25,300. Wow, that is impressive. That's a good deal. The transmission still pisses me off to no end in that thing, but if you take a jump of faith with that and say, because a lot of people do say the transmission does learn your driving habits. But I was talking to another journalist, one of the guys from Motor Week, actually, who has a 2020 Mustang with the automatic, and he says the transmission still bothers him from time to time. He's like, I love the car. It's got 120,000 miles on it, but he's just like, the transmission's I still don't love the transmission. So there's that. But, and it's so annoying they don't offer it with a manual anymore for the EcoBoost. But if you test drive it and it's not bad, for the transmission, absolutely, that's a lot of car for $25,000. Totally suggest making the 2-hour road trip. That's worth it for $9,000 in savings. If you can't get close to that locally, absolutely, that is worth it. That's a great find, actually. And thanks for raising awareness to that, Dozier, as well, for anyone else that wants to go for something like that. And Jason says the Dragon is so fun in the Miata. I bet it is. Yeah, that's another car to really do it properly. Especially, it would have been great in the fall with the roof down in a Miata. That would have been amazing. Yeah, so I'm glad you've gotten to experience that, Jason. That's great. And also, I see Raphael, thank you so much for the first super chat of the night. He says, watching from a hotel tonight, the neighbor hit my gas line, so I had to evacuate. At least the house didn't blow up, so I can go back in a few days. Wow, that is crazy. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Raphael. That is, oh man, yeah, I guess that could have been a whole lot worse. But man, well, hopefully you get reimbursed for the hotel stay and all that. But yeah, sorry to hear that. But at least you're safe, and hopefully the neighbor is all right as well, and everything else can be fixed. But that's crazy. I actually this is probably 20 years ago at this point, had the same thing happen at my parents' house when I was living there. We had an elderly guy living across the street from us, and he was backing out of his driveway, and he had I think it was a 2000 Cadillac Eldorado or something like that. And he was reversing out of his driveway and had some kind of medical event, and basically slumped over to the wheel full throttle and reversed over our front yard and nicked the corner of our house, and then went full steam into the house next door. thankfully missed their gas line by like a foot. Um, and yeah, it was, could have been a whole lot worse. Thankfully, he ended up being okay. Everyone else was fine, thankfully, but it was crazy. So we had one of the very similar close calls before. It's no fun. And yeah, and this is why, I mean, I don't know what the circumstances were with your neighbor, but that's one of the nice things about some of this more automated stuff, and having park sensors and automatic rear braking, and it kind of prevents those kinds of things from hopefully happening in the future. Now, some of these things can be overridden with full throttle application, so in some medical emergencies, price still is going to be a thing, but hopefully reduces that stuff greatly. And I know the tech can be annoying sometimes, but like instances like that are where it really is, it's so important. And I think it is, even if we can just save a few people or a few houses or whatever, like, it's worth it in my opinion. But I know everyone sees that differently. But hope you have a decent sleep there in the hotel tonight, and glad you're all right, Raphael. And let me see here. So where are we here? So Lantern Tail says, speaking of Sentras, I saw a mid-2000s Sentra. I was driving back from a friend's house. The thing had rust in the back, and the side of the car had many dents and scratches. Sounds about right for a 25-year-old Sentra. No, I feel like they're all like that pretty much. Michelle says, I enjoyed the Charger review. Thank you. He says, I don't care that it's not a V8. I think it's neat that it exists, and being a hatchback also makes it interesting, I think. Yeah, and I think the one other thing I'll add, and someone commented this. This was a very good comment. Someone said that they've kind of wrapped their head around it as being a half-price Audi S7. And that nails it on the head with the four-door version, because that is exactly what an Audi S7 is. It's a four-door lift back with all-wheel drive and a bunch of power from a turbocharged six-cylinder. Honestly, it's kind of a better format because it's a V6, which is a little more bad with weight distribution in the Audi versus the inline six in the Dodge. So I think Dodge made basically like a kind of a BMW-ish powered Audi S7 for $60,000 instead of 80. So not quite half price, because I don't think S7s are that expensive. Maybe they're in the 90s now. I don't know. Pricing's gone up so much, but that's, if you look at it like that, which I think I should have thought of that myself. Someone else suggested to me another way to look at it is it's a modern day Regal, Grand National. The Grand National is, it's like a Buick Grand National, and people loved those back in the day with six-cylinder power. Now, obviously, that was coming out of the Malaise era, maybe that, but even these days, like people, I think, like Grand Nationals and still think they're awesome. It's in a good example of an American muscly kind of car with six-cylinder power that still was legendary, still was fantastic, and a lot of fun. But I think, so take your pick. If you look at it like a Grand National, or you look at it like an S7, and I'm going to have to bring this up in my, follow-up video, because again, I neglected to say these things, which I wish I could have added in. But either way you look at it, in those two instances, you don't look at it as a regular muscle car, and you don't look at it in the lens of, oh, this is a car that has the wrong engine, and you instead look at it with a different lens. I think it can be, it's a lot more interesting as a modern day Grand National, or as a cheaper Audi S7. And so, I think it is interesting. Now, obviously the market will dictate it. And, based on the YouTube views, there's more interest in it than I was anticipating. So I hope that I am wrong, and that this car actually has a decent chance of success. And we'll just see what happens. Unfortunately, I didn't get anything out of Dodge this week. I had an entire dinner sitting across from the chief engineer on the Charger. She was very, very good about, not letting anything out of the bag there as far as any future stuff. So, it's hard to say, but it was funny because I was having dinner, across from her as a group of us at a table, and the person sitting next to her was the guy who was writing for Jalopnik. His name's Andy. Wrote for Jalopnik last year about how when we were at the Charger Daytona launch, we were asking one of the other engineers, not her, but one of the other people who's a powertrain engineer, you know, can the Hemi fit or the Hellcat motor fit? He's like, no, it doesn't fit. We're just focused on the EV. We're focused on the Hurricane motor, and that's it. And they said, okay, they said it doesn't fit. We believe them. Fine. And now, I mean, we've actually seen with at least the car at SEMA, the drag car, they put a Hemi in it. It's a smaller Hemi. Yeah. As far as what is it? Is it a 5.8 liter, 5.9 liter V8? It's a different kind of motor, but it's, a V8 they've made it fit in the drag car. Now that might have some modifications that you can't do for a production vehicle for a variety of reasons. So, they might have strictly been talking about production, but I still think, there's rumors that they're running around in Mexico with V8s in them. So, we'll have to see, but it's kind of funny because he kind of like gently brought up like, yeah, like you guys said a V8 didn't fit. Now we're seeing this car at SEMA that has a V8 in it. And then, but it all kind of just like, we didn't make a thing out of it. It just kind of was a passing comment and that was it. But, so I'm assuming a V8 is still coming, but it sounds like as far as the lead engineer is concerned, they're just, focused on ramping up production here now and making sure they're doing the right production split between, the Hurricane and the EV. And, and I will say, many of you also, whenever I've done these lives in the past, I've expressed frustration with Dodge for backpedaling and Ram for backpedaling and, saying the Hurricane's amazing and then saying, just kidding, we're going to, give everyone the V8 again in the Ram, even though it's a worse engine for this vehicle. And I've been frustrated with him, but like I've kind of briefly brought this up, at dinner with the chief engineer. She's like, well, she's like, I mean, I'm not quoting directly here, but basically she was like, we have the flexibility to lean in whichever way we want now. And she's like, that's where, kind of just having that flexibility and giving people the choice. And she's like, if, all of a sudden, the fuel economy standards, come back in, she's like, then we can flex more straight into the EV and it's there. It's ready and waiting. And like I even said, I this was actually with a different conversation the night before that wasn't with the chief engineer, but just speaking with other, Dodge folks. And I was like, I'm bummed to hear about, the Banshee, possibly not becoming a thing anymore because they were going to have the 800 volt, 1,000 horsepower electric Banshee version of the Charger was supposed to be kind of the next thing up, but that's rumored. I think it's rumored. I don't know if that's been confirmed yet, but rumored to, have been kind of, killed off because obviously they're not having a ton of success with the electric one. And I was like, I wanted to see that next evolution because I think if you bring the performance, you will start to get some people that say, wow, well, now it's 1,000 horsepower. Now I'm more open to the EV than I was when it was 670 horsepower or something. And like, and like the ones Dodge person even told me, she's like, it's still like, we have all these options. We have the powertrains now. We've developed the EV platform. We have it. And if, people say that they want a Banshee, then, we can do that. If people say they want more EVs, we can do that. If people say they want less EVs and more gas, we can do that. And they can flex any way they want. And so they really just say, we're just following market demand. And, I mean, I can't blame them for that. And I think it was nice to hear that, evolutions of the electric platform and improvements and new iterations are still on the table if they can make a business case for them. Because that's always the big sticking point is, can you make a business case for this? We all have our dream wish list of cars we want to see brought back and things we want to see done. And a lot of them don't happen because they can't sell enough of them. And, Dodge is kind of learning this in reverse with the Charger. And instead that, they went out with the electric one, but it's like, the business case was, well, we have to do this for fuel economy instead of the business case is maybe solid for this from a consumer standpoint. It's just like, we need to do this. And now they have the flexibility. They don't need to do it as quickly as they, originally had to. And so, but I think they, it's just good to hear that it's not like they're anti-EV, like they're very much still supporting the EVs. It's just that they have to, make sure that they build cars that sell and trying to, offer the EV, but not making that the only option. So I just felt better, after having those discussions this week and knowing that, they are still, in favor of progress and, higher performing models and not just going backwards in performance like we see with Ram. And so I'm hoping that, because I want to see these cars get faster. I want to see them get better and see them, and to me, that's the way to make them better instead of just making, using old tech and old engines. It's just going to make it slower. It's heavier than the old car, so it's going to be worse and slower than the old car if they just do the old engines. And I want to, as a reviewer, I want to see a new version be better than an old version. Otherwise, what's the point? Just keep building the old version. And someone was even joking they should do Challenger Classic, not a Dodge person, but one of the other journalists was saying they should do a Challenger Classic, just bring back the old one. And I'm like, honestly, that's probably the only thing that would make Dodge fans happy is just put the Challenger back into production the same exact way and build it for another 10 years like that, because people don't like change and they don't like any kind of improvement. So let them have the old things. So, but I probably, that's probably not in the cards, but it was funny that he was also bringing that up in front of Dodge executives too. Honestly, maybe not a terrible idea. We'll see. And anyway, though, moving on here. So Dave says the six pack's was an important car, and yours was the first one on my stream. Glad it's doing well for you. Well, thank you. And yeah, I was. It was interesting. There was a bunch of people that were supposed to be on that trip that weren't able to make it to the FAA shutdowns and all the flight cancellations. There was a bunch of people. I mean, I don't want to say who was supposed to be there because it's not my thing to really say, but there was a bunch of people who had to pull out because they just literally couldn't get there, or they just saw the chaos of what was, coming up this week or this past week and just said, I'm not going to get stranded in an airport. I'll film it, when it comes around as a press car. And so that did mean there was less competition, which I think is part of what's helping me with this video for sure. But yeah, there was a bunch. I think like 4 people dropped out of the first wave, the wave I was on, or 5 people dropped out of the prior wave. I was on wave 2 of the drive. I think 4 people dropped out of that one. And I mean, I got very lucky too. Like, thankfully, my flights didn't get delayed or canceled. I was on Delta and everything was good. But so I was flying out of Knoxville on Wednesday, and I had the first flight of the day. It got off, no problem. But I looked at the board, and the next 2 flights, there was, I think, 3 flights out of Knoxville that day on Delta, at least. And all the other 2 were canceled, just straight off at, 6 in the morning. The other 2 were just already canceled. So I was on the only one that actually made it out of Knoxville that day. So I got very lucky. It could have turned into a fiasco. So I don't blame those who decided or, weren't able to do it or just decided not to, not to take a chance with that. Cause yeah, I almost got stranded in Knoxville as well, which probably wouldn't have been the worst thing ever. And it's not that far. I could have probably got a rental car and driven home or something, but happily it worked out for me. And it was also my last time flying through the old Pittsburgh airport, because we're getting a new airport that's opening up on Tuesday. So it was my last time. And they're getting rid of a bunch of the stuff. So we had a cool little tram, and they had a T-Rex that was in the old airport. They're getting rid of all that stuff because the old airport's not going to be used anymore. And so that was another monumental thing there for that trip for me personally. But anyway, moving on here. Hamburger says, which of your old cars do you miss the most? Which one the least, if any? That's hard. I think the one that I miss the most, though, is, I'd say the Bullet. The Bullet is definitely the one that I miss the most, because it's just such a good car. I miss that one the most. I'd say the runner up to that is I really do miss the Spec B, because that's actually, that and the Bullet are basically tied for the amount of time I've ever owned a car for, which is 5.5 years, which I know is hilarious to other people that, the norm is to keep a car for 10 or more years. But for me, that's the longest. So that's the most bonding. And actually the Legacy is the one I've put the most miles on a single car, because that I bought it with 15,000 and I sold it, I think, with 88 or 89,000 miles. And that's the car, I was the cool kid in senior year of high school with that thing with a, 12-inch subwoofer in the back and this fancy, at that time, I mean, it was a, $35,000 car. I bought 1 year used for $20,000, best deal ever. And, so I was, I was the cool kid for a little bit there with the car. And, in college, it was, that was a car that I drove back and forth from Virginia Tech in, multiple times. And, a lot of fun. First car I bought with my own money, first car I had that was a manual. Just a lot of firsts with that one. And so that's the one that I think I really miss the most. And if of any of the cars, I mean, because I'm so happy with the Bullet, where it's at now, and it's, again, it's living a great life. And I don't know how much this has been covered in the media, but the Mustang groups all were talking about this. But it was revealed that the person that owns the 68 Bullet movie car, the one that went for, the record was a $3.4 million, whatever, at Barrett Jackson a few years back. The owner of that is the guy that owns Miller Motorsports Park. His last name is Miller. I can't remember his first name. But he's the guy who bought it. And he's also the guy who runs the Land Cruiser Museum, which is actually where we had the Land Cruiser debut. I don't know if I met the guy. I don't think I did. But he owns the Land Cruiser Museum and all that in Utah. And my Bullet is now in Utah. So it's actually kind of cool in my opinion. I'm actually like extra happy now that my Bullet is living fairly close to the actual original movie car. I don't know if the Miller person actually keeps it in Utah. I would assume he does, but I don't know. Maybe it's somewhere else, hidden away somewhere else in the world. But he pulled it out, and I think it was at the Land Cruiser Museum there whenever he revealed it to everyone at the local Mustang Club a week or two ago. But so now I'm extra happy that it is in the hands that it is in, and that it's so close to the movie car. Like, to me, I want it to stay there. Like, again, I'm sure I won't be able to afford it, for a long time, if I did want to even buy it back, if they ever wanted to sell it to me. A lot of ifs there, but I'm very happy with where that car is, and I want it to stay with them, and I want them to keep enjoying it. And so I wouldn't buy that one back probably, unless the stars aligned. But I would like to buy back the Spec B someday. That could be a really fun, I'm not into project cars, but I don't know. I feel like the Spec B is probably a little rough around the edges at this point. And if I were to do any kind of build or project or something, that would be a really fun story to tell of, this was my first car I bought, the whole just emotional component of that. And it would obviously be one of the few projects I'd actually be motivated to do myself, because it wouldn't just be for content. It would be for me as well, and also just a better story than just a stupid car that I'm flipping in a year and don't give a crap about, just for content. I'm jumping it and flipping it and crushing it, or whatever you do with these crazy project cars when you're done with them. But so I've lost track of that car. I need to run a new Carfax on it, but I used to be in touch with the owner, and then the owner ended up losing it through a relationship split. And so now I have no idea where the Spec B is at, and I kind of want to treasure hunt it and figure out where it's at. I don't have the money to buy it back, but if I could just, it's kind of on the back burners. It could be a fun adventure vlog or something, try and figure that out someday if I ever want to get a little creative and back off of the car reviews a little bit. But that's what I think I missed the most. Sorry again for the long answers here. I promise I'll get caught up on all the questions here. Lots of tangents, and I haven't even drank that much of this whiskey yet. But anyway, I see also we have another super chat. Thank you so much, Isaac, for the super chat, and the very generous super chat as well. He says, I flew last week and my return flight was canceled, but rebooked on another flight. All 4 segments out and back were really empty. Flights on Southwest, I think people were staying home. Yeah, so maybe there's some of that. Maybe it's just some of the cancellations were just, fairly empty planes, and they figure they can consolidate everyone onto one flight or something. Maybe there's some of that too. I'm not sure. Yeah, all the details of all that stuff. But sorry to hear about the cancellation, but hopefully you're able to make it home in roughly the same amount of time as initially planned. And glad it worked out okay for you as well, Isaac. Yeah, that's good to hear. That's hopefully, I mean, it was only I think it was only supposed to be 10% of flights So I mean, it sounded really bad with the number of cancellations because there's so many flights every day, but like hopefully it didn't screw people up too much. And I think now that's going to all improve. Although I think they said that some of that isn't improving. I don't know. But thankfully, as of right now, I have no other flights the rest of the year booked. I got something in January, but I got nothing the rest of the year. So I don't have to worry about about flights for a while here. But thank you so much again, Isaac, for the super chat. And all right, let's try and get concise with the answers here. I apologize, everyone. So let me see. But great question, Hamburger. I appreciate that. And Danny says, just got a 25 Mustang GT for 10 grand off. Much better than my Daytona, which I had to lemon. Well, sorry to hear about that. I know there's definitely some people who have had some issues with those in this, first model year here, which isn't out of the ordinary for some of this stuff, but especially electric Stellantis stuff first year, probably, gonna have some lemons there for sure. So hopefully that worked out for you though. Okay, and glad you got a Mustang there. That's a great. I didn't know they were that discount. I was hearing 4 or 5 grand for GTs, but I had not heard it was up to 10. Which honestly also, especially this time of year is a really good time to buy because they know if they don't sell it to you, they're not selling it until the spring. So there's that leverage you got going for you as well. But I think just Mustang sales are again on pace to be the worst year ever for Mustang sales on record. And I mean, last year was also the worst year on record. And this is like, I think they're down. I think last year they ended around like 40,000 units or something, if I remember correctly. I believe this year they're like going to be in the 30s, like low 30s possibly. So there's probably some of that. So I guess, yeah, if you've been on the fence about the Mustangs and, they're too expensive for you, do a little calling around. You might actually be able to get one for S550 money now, which would then make it a lot more of a compelling argument for sure. And glad you got one, Danny. Hope you're enjoying it. And thanks for letting us know. And Lantern Tail says, what is the most damaged car or neglected car you have seen in the junkyard? I think honestly, the one that jumps out in my mind, I mean, there's a lot, and I don't look at every single car because there's a lot of like normal common stuff I kind of, gloss over. But the one that I think is probably the most wrecked that I saw was that Hyundai Equus that I filmed at the Akron yard the first go around back in that was September. That thing, like the seats were all chewed up, like not just the leather, but like the foam, like someone had dug out the foam. And I'm like, how do you do that? Like, even if you have the most destructive dog known to man, like would they dig through half the seats? Like, it just was like really rough. I mean, everything was it was so rough that I'm like, I don't think I could have screwed this car up this badly, even if I deliberately tried to. Like, it really was an impressive level of destruction. For again, a nice car. Like, we're not talking about, some little, crappy beater. Like, I mean, it's a beautiful, expensive, nice car that really, it was, I mean, I think the model year, I think it was like a 2012 or something. Like, we're not talking about a super old car or anything either. So like, really expensive car, obviously depreciated very fast, but like really went to like a rough owner really quickly, and someone just trashed that thing. I'm like, man, it's an impressive level of work that went into trashing that thing. So I think that's probably the worst that I've seen. But I'm sure I'll see even crazier stuff as I continue to explore. And that's kind of one of the fun things is you never know what you're going to see on these yards. As you've seen with every one of these videos now, it's like, I thought it would dry up or I'd get, less crazy stuff as time went on, but it's like, I still see crazy mods. I still see some really remarkable stuff, rare stuff every time. It's like, I'm always like waiting to be disappointed, and I, knock on wood, have not been disappointed yet. There's always at least, a couple thumbnail worthy, kind of viral looking kind of cars for sure. And Marian, thanks so much for stopping by. He says, hi Matt, the Hellcat boy has arrived. Quick random question, but I just started a YouTube channel and I need help making it grow, but I'm doing pretty good for me starting. Any tips? It's really hard to stand out these days because there's just so I mean, everyone can do it. I mean, that's always been the case, and that's the beauty of YouTube, but now everyone has a top-notch camera in their pocket, and also these days, production value doesn't matter as much as it did before, and actually production value for a lot of these things works against you, and a lot of people prefer a more raw kind of video. So, it really encourages the person who's never done a video before to just say, "Hey, well, people like raw stuff. Let me just, try this out and do it." And so I would just say, make sure that you have a really good idea and something that stands out. And it sounds like, if your channel's doing a little, pretty well so far already, then you might already have be on the right track and already have that good idea and that good niche for yourself there. Um, but I think that that's, it's really all about just standing out these days because it's really hard to do that. I think the other thing to keep in mind is if you are trying to do YouTube seriously, make sure you have a roadmap of how am I going to make this sustainable? Um, you might have one really good idea for a video, or you might have a handful of really good ideas, but you know, and for some people that works. And for some, especially very creative people where they're not as formulaic as I am with stuff, they just fly by the seat of their pants and they put out what they put out and they say, oh, well, I'll see where this takes me. And they get inspired and then they just find their next idea just kind of comes to them. And, it's kind of a little bit more relaxed. So you don't have to do it, this way. But I think YouTube does certainly want consistency and ideally once per day uploads. Now, that's very hard to do, but especially if your idea is something that can be constructed in a way that you can do daily uploads, you'll have a much quicker growth rate, I think. I still think, again, the channels that are doing the best and the channels that have grown the fastest are the daily uploaders, especially in this niche, like Rady's Rides, daily uploads, doing great and has grown really fast. Car Confections, another example. They upload basically every single day, great views, great growth. I think YouTube really likes that because, again, the way the recommendation system works is it's all about recent watch history. If you haven't recently watched one of my videos in the past 2 weeks or less, it's like you're unsubscribed from me automatically because it's just like YouTube. It's like, okay, well, we've offered them however many videos this person has put out in the past 2 weeks. They've said no to all these things. This person must suck in their eyes now. We'll never show them anything again unless you literally go up and look for it yourself. So, if you are uploading every day, you're giving people more opportunities to find something they like and click and watch and then get recommended again because you've just stayed in their recommendations there because you do that recently. But if I'm only doing 2 reviews a week, I got 4 chances to keep you in the recommendations of YouTube for you. And if those 4 cars are swing and a miss, it's like, see you later. Because everyone has other channels they watch. It's not like I'm the only one or anything. So like, you'll forget about me. Again, not you guys. I know you guys are, the major, fans that are not going to forget about me. But the average viewer, they haven't seen me for 2 weeks. They're seeing everybody else, and you forget about me, and then it's like people rediscover me 10 years later and say, oh crap, I didn't know you still did stuff, I thought you quit or whatever. And they are like, I was subscribed to you, why did I see your stuff? And it's because subscriptions don't matter anymore. So again, if you and that's an ideal formula. You can still succeed on YouTube not doing daily uploads and not having something that people watch every 2 weeks or whatever, but like that's what I've seen as the best way for success. Also, just new channels in general. YouTube very much likes to push those because they like seeing new voices and they like making it, a very level playing field and a place where you don't have to be a giant YouTuber to make it or to get views, which is commendable of them that, again, they're giving everyone a shot and, a fairly even shot these days. So I think that is, but if you have a roadmap of, it doesn't have to be, every video, lined up, but if you have an idea, okay, I know this is a topic that I can continue to make content on into the future, and you even have a rough idea of where you're headed with this channel, that'll really help, so that you can be consistent and hopefully, because that's how you make it a career and make it your full-time thing is churning out the content. And that's kind of why, you see a lot of, especially in the car niche, you see these channels that, whether it's the drive, whenever, they were getting, $1 million a year from YouTube or whatever to you make amazing content in those early years. And then once the money dried up, they try to go for a little longer, but then it just petered out because they went too big. And that's the danger. You see a lot of these channels where they come onto the scene, they do really amazing, huge stuff, and then they can't sustain it either for money reasons or for, just like, how do you outdo yourself over and over and over again? It's kind of the Mr. Beast problem of, how, if you've already done all the insane stuff, like how many more insane things can you do before it just gets old and tired, and that shock value goes away eventually. So that's why, like with me, it's like, for better or for worse, I mean, clearly my channel is not doing great, so don't don't take my advice to heart. But it's something I try to construct it as, okay, I'm staying in my lane. I'm not going to try and pretend to be top gear, but I'm going to do something where it's consistent, where I can do the same formula week in and week out and have consistent, reviews, and do it in a way that is sustainable for me so that I don't go crazy, and it's sustainable for you guys. So it's not something that's, like weird, or I'm losing people because I'm always experimenting with doing something one way or the other. It's predictable, it's familiar, and for some people that equals boring. Clearly a lot of people, but like, I think, again, like I've been doing this 10 years, and now obviously it's not doing great, but I think the fact that I was 10 years full time on this proves that at least back in the day that was a strategy that worked, and it fed me and Beth for, a long time here. And we'll see again what the future holds. But so yeah, I think that's kind of the basics that I can recommend. I mean, there's a zillion other things, and there's great channels that give advice too. If you haven't already followed along, there's Tube Buddies, a YouTube channel, and vidIQ. They both have tools. You don't have to use their tools. They may help in some instances, but they just have good advice on their YouTube channels. So check those channels out for sure if you want to, learn more about how everything works and what YouTube, is looking for and all that kind of stuff. And best of luck with the channel. And Big Boss says, I'm looking to buy my first Mustang in between the RTR from Ford coming next year or the 2026 GT. Thoughts? RTR, I mean, it's an EcoBoost, right? If you're talking about the EcoBoost RTR, it's going to be too expensive for still the same horsepower. You're much better off just getting a GT, in my opinion. I think RTR, again, we don't know pricing, but it's more expensive than an EcoBoost currently. And even if it's a little bit more, just get a GT, especially if they're 10 grand off right now versus the new RTR is probably not going to have huge discounts right off the bat. I'd pick up a GT, for 10 grand off now or whenever, it's comfortable for you. But yeah, it sounds like, that's going to probably be the better way to go, in my opinion. And I think also we had, apologies everyone, I missed the other couple of super chats and member questions here. So Justin, thanks so much for being a member for 39 months now. I really appreciate it. He says, hey Matt, what's the best way you track down old cars? I have an Acura TL that got totaled and fixed and would love to see where it ended up at. So Carfax, I mean, there's others. I think there's like, what is it, Auto Experian or something, but I've just always used Carfax, not sponsored or anything, but you run a Carfax on it, and that is going to give you, the basic high level stuff, like as far as where it's registered at, as far as states goes. You don't get the address or anything, but what state is it in? Does it have a clear title? What has happened in the history? Has it been maintained? All those kinds of things. That's going to give you, some really good info there. Now it's, I think it's what, $35 for a Carfax right now or something. So it's not cheap. So it comes down to how badly you want to know that info. But a Carfax is the best place, in my opinion. Before you run a Carfax, though, make sure that if you have the VIN, Google the VIN. Just Google it, and you will sometimes get a hit for, like, if the car was was at a dealership. And a lot of times, like, the dealerships still have like some of their old listings or just archive stuff that still gets pulled up in a Google search, or like auction history if it went through an auction, or if it was on Copart. They have archive stuff where you can see, okay, this isn't on Copart anymore, but it had a listing at one point, and maybe you see some old pictures. That's actually how I don't think it was Copart, but it was one of the sketchy, like, other sites that's how I found out about the Mini. The Carfax told me the Mini had something happen to it, And then I Google the VIN, and then I see an auction listing. I think it was, yeah, a Copart kind of thing that showed it, with a smashed in front end, and had some accident damage, and that was enough to total it. And so I knew, okay, someone wrecked it, and it's now been crushed and turned into a refrigerator or whatever. So but yeah, that's basically first up. Google it. After that, Carfax it. That's going to probably be the only things you can really do, to my knowledge. Maybe others have other tips, but I think that's kind of the most you can do here. And Raphael, thank you so much for super chat. He says, "Good week for cars. I love the Scat Pack. I really love the A6 e-tron. And my friend likes the Sentra enough that he's trading in for one this week." Oh, that's awesome. Well, hope he enjoys the Sentra. I'm actually going to be able to have one for a week here. They're going to drop it off here this coming week. So, I just drove it a couple weeks ago, so I'm happy to have a quick follow-up here and have it for a whole week and, get some more time with it. But I think Sentra's great. And yeah, I think it's arguably the best in its segment. Like I said in the video, it's not the best from, mechanical standpoint and stuff, but as far as the whole package, what you get for the money, yeah, it's hard to beat, I think. And yeah, so I'm glad that was helpful for them, hopefully, and glad that they're going to be able to get one of the Sentras and they're showing up on dealer lots here. And yeah, glad you enjoyed the channel, Raphael. Thank you again for the super chat. And Nightbreaker, thank you so much for being a member for a month. I really appreciate that. He says, "Hi, Matt. Good seeing you. I'm thinking of trading in my Mazda 3 in about a year from now for a more fun car. What are your thoughts on the Volkswagen GTI?" GTI is a lot of fun. I did do reviews on, the various GTIs over the past several years, including I spent a week with one for this, Mark 8.5 earlier this year. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. But, so that's going to give you all my in-depth thoughts on that car. But, high level stuff coming out of the Mazda 3, especially, it handles really great. It's going to be a nice upgrade in that regard. Obviously a huge power improvement as well. The GTI, and they've mostly fixed the transmission tuning that I kind of got annoyed with in the Mark 8s. Mark 8.5 is certainly better. Infotainment is a little bit better. GTI is really nice if you're talking about a new one, I'm assuming. So yeah, I like GTI. I think, the only thing I will say is they are a little pricey when you get to the higher ones. And I'm glad I have whiskey here tonight. If you are going into the 40s for a GTI, now you're going to have less features. But if you're spending that kind of money, go for GR Corolla. Cheers. But if you're going for a low 30s, lower trim of the GTI, then I think it's a good value. Because it's a lot of car and it's a lot of punch. And it's a very nice car to live with. So, I wish they had the manual still, but the automatic is great. So yeah, I think the GTI is a very nice car, and I'm happy it still exists. And I think in the review, I probably discussed some of the competitors, so definitely check out, especially the end of that video, for some other options. I think, you have a Mazda 3. I'm not sure what generation you have, but Mazda 3 Turbo, I think is a very good option as well. It's all-wheel drive. It's not as good with the handling as GTI. But if you like Mazda, if you're happy with your dealer, if you take it to the dealer, and you want to stay in the Mazda family, and they may even give you a little bit of a better deal versus coming off, fresh with a new dealer. I like Mazda 3 a lot. Personally, I think I actually prefer Mazda 3 because I don't need to have the best handling possible. So for me, especially from a reliability standpoint as well, long term, GTI makes me a little nervous long term, just because electrical gremlins some of these European cars have later in life, especially Volkswagens. I don't, and they have a shorter warranty. It's 4-year powertrain warranty. So GTI would be a nice car for a few years. I wouldn't want to own one out of warranty though, personally. Versus Mazda 3, I would have more faith owning one out of warranty. Now, I mean, it has a regular torque converter automatic, which is more predictable, but also not as fun as the dual clutch and the GTI. So there's give and take, and I don't have to rehash the whole video again. You can watch that for my 30 plus minutes of thoughts on GTI. But yeah, there's other options for sure. But I think GTI is a fantastic option if you whatever it is that's drawing you to GTI. I mean, it's a legendary car for a reason, and it's a very fun one. So I think it'd be a solid choice for sure. And I see also, while we're on that topic there, Darnell says GTI is a blast, and Elantra N is also cool, but GTI is a little more reserved, not racy looking. Yeah, and that is really the big sticking point. I think Elantra N is a very extroverted kind of car. Not everyone has that personality. Even myself, like, I love how Elantra N drives, but I would really love a Elantra N driving experience in a GTI body. That would be kind of more my speed, personality wise. So I can appreciate, wanting to fly under the radar with a GTI for sure. And I see Nightbreakers thanking Darnell and says, yeah, the Elantra N does look enticing too, but it's a bit hard for me to get over that boy racer look. Okay, so yeah, on the same page there. Totally can relate. So I mean, the Mazda 3 Turbo kind of, obviously doesn't have that boy racer look. So that one could be a decent alternative, not to complicate your decision making. And again, if you want a GTI, get a GTI. They're great cars. Just, be careful. Make sure you get a discount too. At this point, they shouldn't be going for sticker price or anything. So hopefully you can get a good deal on one too. And that could change the equation too, depending on pricing for all of these cars in the real world, not just the MSRP. So, but best of luck deciding, Nightbreaker, and let me know if you have any follow-up questions as well. And Jordan, thank you so much for super chat as well. He says, could Dodge compete with the GR Corolla with a possible redesigned neon as a hatch with amazing power and new styling? I mean, yeah, I mean, you guys saw probably there's that new Hurricane 4 that they just came out with. And, doing that with, like in a small car, like that's neon SRT4 written all over it. Even putting that motor in like the Hornet would be fun. But yeah, I don't know if they're ever going to have any interest in that. It doesn't sound like Dodge is really interested to play in that segment. So, they're very happy. I mean, Durango is having a resurgence this year, and just the money printers of, just Durango and Grand Cherokee, sells a ton. I mean, that's different brand, but, under the same hat there. So, I think that they're just happy to churn out the big SUVs because that's what people want right now. Maybe they'll, more closely consider small cars if Hornet has a resurgence as well. But if Hornet's doing terrible and that's the more practical, more consumer-friendly crossover, then a Hornet sedan essentially sounds like it's just another bad recipe right now. So I'm sure the accountants would probably, shoot that one down. But it's a fun idea for sure. I wish it was a viable, option for the market here. And thanks for the super chat, Jordan. It's a fun idea for sure. And let me see here. Apologies to all the other members that are have been waiting here for questions and all that. But let me see. And also, by the way, all members do have that, when you see people say the member for 39 months and member for 1 month, every member does have one of those, I think, each month. If you haven't used those, that is a great way if you don't want to actually do a super chat to get your question answered quicker with that as well. Just in case people didn't know, you do have one of those, I think, at least once a month you can use. But let me see here. So where were we? Chad says, hi, Matt. I just got home from work. On the way home, I spotted a BMW using their blinker to get out of the left lane so I could pass. Well, that's very nice. I'm happy to hear there's hope for humanity with that. And Vishal agrees about the Z being a great deal. And Lantern Tail says 43 grand is accurate pricing. The car is already dead before it arrived. Yep, absolutely. I mean, and that's why I didn't think they were going to go that high, because Integra, even with its 2026 price increase, which I think is ill-advised and makes that a harder proposition, but a loaded Integra is like just over 40. It's like 40,200 or something like that now, with destination included, for the A-spec manual loaded up, kind of thing. So again, it's not a two-door and it's not a hybrid, but why would you spend more money than a loaded Integra for a car that is just as fast and way less practical and way less luxurious? I just, oh man, Honda makes great products, but and I haven't been on a Honda program in a long time. This is probably why, but like I think Honda even more so than he's Subaru probably because Subaru I kind of just like throw my hands up in the air about Subaru's decision making and it's like there's no rhyme or reason. And I've talked to some of their executives, when I was on the program for Forest Wilderness and Crosstrack Hybrid recently, and they have some good reasons for some of the things. Other things, it's just like even when I ask them point blank, they're just like, oh, and I don't get a great answers. So I for them, it's just like it's whatever with Subaru, but like Honda has so many, like we've talked about so many times, so many good ingredients for why is a Accord not all-wheel drive? Why do we not have a hybrid HRV? Why do we not have a hybrid everything in the lineup? There's so many of these low-hanging fruit and then all these bad pricing things that I'm just like, I just so desperately want to talk to Honda executives and be like, what's the game plan here? Like, please make this make sense for me. Because I so desperately want to understand, but it's indefensible. There's no way to defend 43 grand for Prelude. I don't, unless it matched Type R on horsepower, then okay, fine. But like, obviously it's not even close. So like, I don't see it. I don't understand it. And it makes me sad. Or annoyed, I guess. Car Driver says 42 is the estimate according to Landswat. So it might just be an outdated article there if this is fresh pricing that just came out in the past day or two here. Car Driver is not great about updating stuff like that all the time, but maybe their article is saying something different. I hope it's less. We'll see. And Vishal says, I really dropped a bombshell piece of news tonight. You certainly did, Vishal. So thank you for that, though, because I don't have time to keep up on news as much anymore now that I'm not doing the weekly updates. So I appreciate some of these things that I might not have picked up. And let me see, Nightbreaker, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, thanks for all the helpful info. I'll have to test drive them. Between the GTI and the Elantra N, which is more fun and which is more expensive to maintain? Maintenance wise, you're probably equal on both of those. So I think, but the nice thing is the Elantra N is under the 10-year, 100,000 mile powertrain warranty. Bumper to bumper, even that is longer because they have it's 3-year 36. So that is the one thing. So GTI has a longer because the bumper to bumper is the same as powertrain. So it's 4-year, 50,000 mile for everything on a Volkswagen. So you have one less year with Hyundai. You have 3-year 36 bumper to bumper. But then you have the 10-year 100,000 mile powertrain for a performance car with a high performing motor. That's very nice to have. So long run, because I think dealer costs can be pretty equal for like oil changes and regular stuff like that. But as far as long-term stuff, I would rather have the 10-year powertrain warranty, obviously, over a 4-year 50,000. It's literally half as much coverage mileage wise. So that'd be the way to go. Now, as far as which is more fun, absolutely Elantra N. It's just one, it comes in a manual still, which I don't know how you feel about that, but manual is more engaging, more fun in my opinion. But even if we're talking dual clutch versus dual clutch, I actually like the programming of the Hyundai dual clutch better. I think it's a better dual clutch. Probably a very unpopular opinion because I know there's a ton of DSG fans in Volkswagen that every time I complain about that transmission, I get a million people to come out of the woodwork telling me how wrong I am. But Elantra N is just more fun. It's more character. It's more sound. It's more customization. You get the adaptive dampers in all Elantra N's at 35 versus I think it's only Autobahn and the other top trim for GTI. But also like there's more difference in damping, I think, in Elantra N. But the active exhaust is great. Steering, it handles better because it's a more hardcore-ish. It's not hardcore really in my opinion, but a more focused approach with the Elantra N versus GTI, which has GTI just is it's a victim of its own success where GTI has to be everything for everyone. It's a car that, you even have like the Mark Zuckerbergs that drove GTIs for a while. I don't think he does anymore, but you have like, it's a car that a lot of like, people drive, like regular people that, want performance under the radar. But then you also have to appeal to the boy racer crowd. So it has to kind of have a foot in both worlds. And that kind of, I think, gives it a little bit of a divided mission, and then made it a little bit softer than I think some people would like it to be. Versus the launcher end makes no apologies, and it's out there, and it's wild, but it's more fun as a result. So absolutely, a launcher end is, if you're talking driving experience, better car. And but the boy racer look thing, certainly I can relate to that. I think, like, if it were me and I really was in that kind of a situation and I wanted an Elantra N, I think what I would do is I would buy an Elantra N. The first thing I would do is all the red striping at the bottom, I would do a little vinyl strip of black and make that black instead of red, so that stands out a little bit less. Trade trunks with an N line or any other regular Elantra that's the same color. It's a little bit harder if you get the blue that's exclusive to the N. But if you get any of the other colors, they're shared with the regular N line Elantra, which doesn't have the spoiler. And just, you can swap trunks. At least in the Subaru community, there was a very common like thread of like people wanted to ditch the wings on their STIs and people who wanted the wings for the WRXs, and they just meet up, they swap, they shake hands, maybe buy a beer for the guy that's giving them the wing, and off you go. It might not be that simple anymore. This was 15, 20 years ago, but like, I would assume that there's a launch or N line people, or just regular launch people that would love your wing, and you can probably swap and maybe make a few bucks even as well. And then you got a regular-ish looking Elantra. I mean, you still have the more bolder front and rear bumper, but I feel like most people could probably live with that a little easier. Yeah, I think that's what I would do if I wanted a Elantra N. Yeah, I'd get rid of the red trim, swap trunks, and then I'd be happy, and I'd drive around and have a blast. So a little food for thought there. Not that you asked for it probably, but anyway, thank you so much again, Nightbreaker, for the super chat. Best of luck deciding. Hopefully I didn't make it more confusing for you. And Darnell, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, have a great night or great week, Matt, and take care all. Thanks for stopping by, Darnell. Hope you're having have a great week here going forward, and we will be going for another 40 minutes here for everyone else that wants to continue to hang. Jordan, thank you so much for super chat voices. Carbuzz app or just web-based? I think the website's probably fine, although the website does run very hot on my phone when I'm just browsing. So maybe the app's better for that. If you're going to be on it all the time and you don't want to kill your phone battery, probably better to use the app, I'm guessing. I actually don't have the app, so I don't know if it's better on battery usage, but man, the website, like my phone gets hot on the website. So that might be the better way to do it there. Let me see. Okay, Spaces, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate that. Happy to see a lot of new faces that are able to get the membership. So thank you for your generosity, and I'm sure they appreciate it as well. Okay, Spaces. And Outside Center, thank you so much for a super chat. They said, I went to the Seattle Auto Show today, and I saw the new Charger in person, and I love the way it looks. If they put a Hellcat V8 and manual in it, I'm in. Well, yeah, never say never. We'll see what happens. Based on the drag car, it makes me think they might have to do something a little smaller displacement, but still could have a supercharged V8 possibly. We'll see what happens. Yeah, my still dream Hellcat setup would be put a naturally aspirated V8 in it to give it the V8 sound, but then do a plug-in hybrid to give it the extra 200 horsepower or whatever with electrification. Then you have kind of the best of both worlds. I know that would also then put it under the same fate as the M5 and give you the engine weight and some battery weight, which would, make it an extra 1,000 pounds or whatever, I'm sure. So I know that wouldn't be for everyone, but to me, that would be like, okay, we're progressing and not just doing the same old, same old. The manual, I don't know about a manual. That actually, I should have asked them about that. I didn't even think to ask about that on the press drive, but like, I feel like they could maybe make a manual fit in there. I don't know, the space constraints with the transmission tunnel, because they are using a new ZF8 speed. It still is a ZF8 speed, so it's probably not that different from the old generation because it's just a 4th generation of that. But, if there's any packaging differences, that would maybe make it harder to, just be a direct swap in versus, the automatic. I don't know. But I think a manual is probably a little more likely than a port over Hellcat, but they may also do that as well. I mean, it sounds like that's going to probably happen for Ram. It sounds like, TRX is going to come back exactly the way it was pretty much, which again makes total sense. TRX was awesome. And, again, if they don't have to worry about emissions regulations and they can get put out a 9 MPG TRX again, enjoy the party while it lasts, I guess, So, I'm not sure if that would fit in Charger, again, from a production standpoint. You can do it in a drag car, but will it pass pedestrian safety regulations? Because I think the safety stuff is still in effect, even if the emission stuff isn't. So you still have those kinds of concerns about crumple zones and things like that. And so I don't know, we'll see. But because I know that's why there's never been a V8 Gladiator, I believe, is the issue was they couldn't fit it with the bumper beam because you need extra cooling on Gladiator versus Wrangler. It fits in Wrangler because there's less cooling. And the way the front end is configured is different on Wrangler than it is on Gladiator. But I think that's why they said it never got it, if my memory serves me right. It's either that or was the Hellcat that was the reason why. But regardless, like there's those types of things where it's not like they don't want to do it. It's just that like they can't not have a bumper beam, and you can't just like put a extra pig nose on the front of a Gladiator in order to fit this engine and shoehorn it in and re-engineer the whole front end because they're going to recrash it for, safety and stuff. So, there's some of those kinds of things that even if you don't have any emissions to worry about, you may still not be able to do it. So I just don't know, again, how that all shakes out. Time will tell, I guess, but we'll see what happens. And thank you so much for the super chat. And let me see here. So let me see. And Nightbreaker also says, sounds like a good idea with the idea about the launcher. And he says, it's all good, Matt. Thanks a bunch. Luckily, I have a whole year to research and make up my mind. Well, that's good to hear. And best of luck deciding. And let me see here. So where were we here? So Lantern Tail says this will increase Z sales, so something good will come out of this. That's true. I guess that's one way to look at it is, people who, want a sport coupe, hopefully they find themselves cross-shopping other things and see that the Z is there and ready and waiting. I am really rooting for a Nissan Renaissance here. And I think that they're on a good path with, kicks being phenomenal, with Sentra being phenomenal. I have the Leaf this week, the new Leaf, which isn't going to probably be a huge seller these days with, again, the way, the disincentivized structure of things now. But, I think Leaf is a fantastic product. You'll, hear all my thoughts in the review. But yeah, I think that they're on a very good track. And I think that hopefully, with Z, if they can hold the pricing down on that, then that gets better and better by the day. And Doug, thanks for stopping by. He says he spotted a 2002 collector's edition Pontiac Trans Am. Very nice. That's awesome. I see. I'm glad everyone's keeping count of the Toyota mentions there for the drinks. And Lantern Tail says, I'd love to see the type of person who buys a Prelude. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, the Honda Pro Jasons and just the diehards that, will buy it no matter what. But yeah, it's just not going to be competitive if that's really the price. So, and I think it works in Japan. I kind of wonder if some of this stuff is, that typical, sometimes, there's this disconnect of, okay, well, this is great for Japan and Japanese people appreciate this. And that's why, again, it's sold out in Japan for the first year here, the collector's edition or whatever, which I think they only made like 2,000 of them or something, or that's all they're planning on making. But, in a place like Japan where you don't have as many options, as far as other brands and, people have smaller roads and, there's other things to consider, Prelude probably makes more sense. And again, depending on how all these other things are priced as well, all these, importing a Mustang is probably very expensive, things like that. And, so there's probably other things but I mean, again, you have Z in Japan. So, I mean, assuming the pricing is the same kind of margins here, then even in Japan, though, just buy a Z or anything. I mean, buy a BRZ, a G86. I mean, even those are faster and they're, way cheaper. So anyway, just what are they thinking? Anyway, So yeah, I will like to see who buys Preludes. Assuming they're gonna be a rare species. And Colby says, Matt, can you tell us more about what you thought of the about that mini Camden you drove? That talks to you. That review made me go for a Countryman S way back in the day. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's a throwback. So that was one of my really good friends had the Cooper S Camden edition, which yeah, it was a really quirky thing where they had it so that it did in fact respond to you as you drove. Now it was very dim-witted with the responses. It's basically just G activated, and if you went around a corner fast, there was I don't know what 3 or 4 phrases that it had to pull from, and it was the same phrase every time. But I mean, honestly, it was very forward thinking because now the talk is that we'll have AI kind of interact with you in a similar way in a car in the future. And so I mean, hey, Mini beat them, 10 plus years of the punch on that, and that was cool. But yeah, that's impressive. You remember that review. So yeah, I mean, it was a cool car. I mean, otherwise it's just a regular R56 Mini. But that car was really great for my friend, and that's what inspired me to get mine because he had great luck with his. It was reliable, it was phenomenal, and he drove it a bunch and never had a single issue with it. And I was like, oh well, I've heard bad things about Minis, but my buddy has great luck with his. I'm gonna try my luck with it too because I wanted one as well. And unfortunately, I just had a bad flip of the coin there with the one that I grabbed. But yeah, there's not much more to really say about it, though. I don't think it was fun though. I think he left it on for a while. I think eventually, if I recall, I think he eventually turned it off because it's the same 4 sentences every time you go around a corner. It's one of those things that gets old quick, but it's a fun little novelty. And if you're in the mood for it, it's easy to turn back on, I think too. But yeah, it was a fun one. And hope you enjoyed your Countryman. Hope you enjoyed your Countryman S, and I hope that it treated you better than my R56 treated me. And Dave says he meant the 300 SL as far as the supercar we discussed an hour ago or whatever. And yeah, sorry, I got sidetracked here. It took forever to get to your comment there, Dave. But yeah, 4GT, yeah, I think that's probably my final answer as far as stuff like that. But Lantern Tail says, be careful driving at night. I see a lot of people driving without headlights on. I was behind a car without the lights on, and the person almost got hit taking a left turn. Man, yes, that is good advice for sure. I mean, also just even depending on where you live, but around here there's a ton of deer. It's a big problem with people just hitting deer a lot at night. But yeah, and even just daylight savings, like whenever that time switch ever happens, like the amount of traffic accidents just skyrockets. And yeah, but definitely always got to be very cautious with, and that's why like it's good to have the reflectors too for the people who don't have their lights on. At least you have the reflectors, and that's why personally I'm not a huge fan of people that like black out and tint their reflectors or their headlights or taillights or whatever. Because it's like you need that stuff if your lights are out and you don't know it or whatever, or you're forgetting to turn them on. It's good to have all that stuff, working in factory condition. And glad you turned out okay and you didn't get hit, but definitely, I totally agree. You got to be defensive driving all the time now. And Vishal says, I don't know how people drive without their lights on. My Jetta tells me to turn on my headlights if I'm in a dark place. That's good. Yeah, I think the thing that in the past decade or so has driven up that whole thing of headlights not being on is, early, 10 years or earlier, there was the mental trigger of your headlights. If your headlights were off, your gauge cluster was off, and that was dark. And so people said, if they're looking down or whatever, oh, my gauges aren't on. Oh, my lights aren't on. And that was a good visual cue. And now with either the electroluminescent gauges in, analog stuff or just everyone having a screen for a cluster, a lot of these clusters are always on and always illuminated. And I think for a lot of people that was, again, their reminder. And so without that reminder, it's like, oh, most of my lights are on, especially if all you're seeing are screens now. I mean, I know a lot of people, their buttons don't light up if their lights aren't on either. But if you don't have a lot of buttons, especially not at eye level, and you just got two bright screens blaring in your face, then it's like, okay, well, especially if you're driving in a well-lit area, you probably might have forgotten. I'm a big fan of auto headlights too, and I think just leaving everything on auto is the better way to do it. But yeah, for those who don't want to do that for whatever reason, I think that's been the biggest thing is the age clusters and the lack of buttons that are, not there to not be illuminated. But yeah, but it's always been an issue, but I think that's driven it to be a little bit more of an issue recently. But it's good your Jetta tells you to turn your lights on. I feel like there's other cars that probably do that too, but yeah, I mean, why do people do anything they do? I mean, there's the most bizarre stuff I see. This week especially, there was multiple days where people came to full stops at a green light, and I'm like, am I going colorblind here? Is there like something I'm missing? That like it happened twice, and I'm like, all right, this like once, okay, fine, but like twice, like it seemed like a weird something's going on here that two people feel the need to stop at a green light. So I don't know, but that was my weird spot this week. And Luke says, when is the new Subaru Outback drive? It actually happened this past week. It was in Sedona, Arizona this week, and that was one I was not invited on. Subaru's kind of weird. They invited me on, the Crosstrek and Forester stuff, and didn't get an invite for Outback. So I'm gonna have to wait for it as a press car, which again now will be probably January, which I'm actually fine with because that is one of the top cars of the Northeast here, and they launched it in Arizona, and I actually was having a discussion on the Forester thing with the head of Subaru PR. I'm like, oh, you guys should do it in the snow. And he's like, oh, journalists complain sometimes if it's in the snow and this, that, and the other. So that's why they, did it in a nice warm place. But I'm like, I want to test out the new Outback in the snow. And so if I'm getting it in January or February as a press car, I think I might have a better review possibly, as far as just a more relatable kind of review for especially the whole East Coast. At least I know there's a lot of people obviously out west that it'll be completely irrelevant how it doesn't snow, but I'm excited to hopefully try it out that way. I did actually, the Subaru dealer that I worked with for the Legacy XT review that I did a couple of months back, he actually offered me, he said, hey, if you ever want to when we get the new Outbacks in, I can give you a call. And I said, yeah, possibly, we'll see what happens. I may do that to like do a base one or something and then have the press car, which will be, I'm sure, a top trim or whatever for a week and do both. Because I feel like Outback has enough interest. Subarus always do so well on my channel typically that probably worth doing 2 videos on. So I may still do that. So you might see an Outback review from me here at the end of the year sometime because I think they're starting to show up at dealers in the next couple of weeks. So I may sneak that one in before the end of the year as a dealer review for the day and then spend a week with one in January or February possibly. But yeah, I didn't go on that one, unfortunately. And let me see. I see Chad says cheers to Beth as well. I appreciate it. And Jason says, wow, when did YouTube start throwing commercials in a live stream? Never happened to me before. I missed the whole talk about the Caribbean booze. I apologize for that. Yeah, so YouTube is really pushing the ads in live streams. I've elected to let them start doing that because they assured me that for members especially, there shouldn't be any ads or very minimal ads, and they claim that it's intelligent with how they do it. I knew that the ads, I thought they were supposed to play side by side with the live stream, and I thought they were supposed to not do sound so you could still hear me talking. That's disappointing. That's not the case because that was my fear, was that it would cut in and people would miss the discussion. It would kind of take them out of the flow of the stream here. So maybe I'll disable them for the next stream then. Thanks for letting me know, Jason. That's disappointing that it's not a good experience. I'll have to keep waiting until it's a good experience because like honestly, like this, it's not even about the ad revenue because the ad stream, right now we have 46 people in here watching, and I'm sure some people come and go, so maybe it's a little bit more, but like the ad revenue on like 100 people seeing a commercial is like next to nothing. So it's not even worth doing. If it's going to make it a worse experience for you guys, then I'll just disable it again and wait for YouTube to fix that. But they assured me it was going to be like a better experience. So thank you for letting me know, Jason. And Lantern Tail says, someone who cross shops the Prelude with a Z, Super or Mustang and pick the Honda is going to get bullied at car meets. That's true. I hope people don't get bullied. I'm not a fan of bullying, but there's going to be some questions for sure. I'm guaranteed there will be. And with how slow I get press cars, maybe in the springtime, if I get a Prelude press car, because that's probably when I'll finally drive one. I'll have to take it to a Cars and Coffee, and I'll be the person that gets accosted with all the questions of what were you thinking, and I can use the defensive. It's not mine. I didn't pay for it. Check it out anyway. But anyway, so B. Mitchell says, whenever I hear Scat Pack, I think of what the raccoon in the neighborhood left in my backyard. It's always funny how that didn't get ridiculed more, honestly, especially because that is like definitely a thing with older generations that have heard the word scat thrown around more than maybe younger generations, where that isn't really slang, I think, these days as much. So yeah, I guess the nostalgia won over the negative connotations there. And Robert says, alternative to the Charger 6-pack, but not as long. It's huge. Yeah, I mean, I guess an alternative, yeah, I don't know. There's really not much. I mean, I guess I could argue if you want something a little smaller, maybe BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe with the inline six. That kind of gives you all the same stuff too. But also, again, still kind of pricey. Like I said in my review, I think that M240i BMW is a really nice competitor too. Same stuff, as far as basic ideas of, a 3-liter inline six with turbos, although it's, I think, single turbo for the, was it B58 or S58 in that? But you have the all-wheel drive, you have a coupe, and it's smaller. So I think M240i is definitely what I would recommend as the best alternative there. And let me see. And Raphael also says the Scat Pack is excellent. I want one. We'll definitely take one for a test drive when they show up at dealers and see if the dealers make you an offer you can't refuse. KMD says, thoughts on the Ferrari 360, Audi R8, or Aston Martin V8 Vantage as first supercars? I think between those three, your best bet is going to be the R8 because it's going to be the least exotic engine of the bunch. It's also only an Audi. So Audi's servicing and stuff, it's going to be a lot better than Aston and Ferrari servicing. And also the R8s, if you're talking about a regular V8 R8, that is a motor that, again, was in a bunch of other stuff. So it's not quite as exclusive. Aston is, not terrible, but they're also like more hand-built cars. I actually know someone who has an Aston Martin V8 Vantage, the, earliest kind of modern gen, 2006 or whatever. And they've had some weird stuff. The clutch is like an on-off switch, apparently, and it can be kind of tricky, I think. They have had a few little minor things, mostly been fine, though, I think. But I think R8 is definitely going to be the most reliable and the easiest to live with. And you get the perk of, it's still mid-engine, it still looks exotic. But, I think, the Audi would be the vote, in my opinion, for sure. The others are fun and fantastic as well. But I think with that criteria of, easiest kind of first supercar, I think that would be the way I would go personally. Now, if you don't care about that stuff, you're fine paying, for expensive servicing and stuff. I think Ferrari 360 has the best potential to appreciate more and be a better investment. And I would argue it's the best sounding and the coolest one of the three, in my opinion. So yeah, if you don't mind it or you want a better investment, that's probably the better way to go there. And I love the V8 Vantage as well. So there's no bad choice there. I think, honestly, the R8, especially the V8 R8, is the least exciting one, but the best bet from, again, livability standpoint. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions, though. And congrats on being in that position, potentially, of picking up your first supercar. That's a very good group of cars to pick from. You can't go wrong with any of them, in my opinion. And Darnell says the Charger review looks so fun. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Darnell. It was fun for sure. And Chad says, we liked your shelf tour. You have a lot of cool keepsakes. I don't know how I didn't know your full last name until you showed your driving school certificates. Yeah, that's just something I did because it's hard to remember. And also I kind of like, not putting that out there for the entire world to see. Just for a privacy kind of standpoint. I mean, it's not probably super hard to figure out, but just something I kind of like having a little bit of a veil there in a way with the Matt Moran name instead. But I'm glad you like the shelf tour too. And Raphael says, best case, have the Hemi V8, the Hurricane V6, and the full EV. Let's cover everyone. Yeah, I mean, I think the choices are great. It's the Toyota approach, right? So I think that'd be good. I just hope that there's still progress. That's all I want. Is I just want it to be better than the old V8s. From a performance standpoint. Otherwise, what's the point? But yeah, I get it. And Lantern Tail says, what used cars have you reviewed that you don't recommend anymore due to increased pricing or information that wasn't available at the time? It's a good question. I'd probably have to look at the list of everything I've done because I don't think there's really anything in particular that jumps out to me off the top of my head. I can't think of anything that I have a different feeling on now than I did previously. I'm sure if I looked through and scrolled through the 850 reviews or whatever I've done, I'm sure there would be something, but yeah, I don't know. I think because even every once in a while, I will scroll through like the whole playlist in case there's any thumbnails I want to tweak or try and improve titles or things like that. But when I look at all my old stuff, I feel like most of that stuff all holds up, especially for the time period that they were filmed in. Now, if I went and had a go in, like we mentioned, the MR2, like if I had another go in one of those these days, I'd maybe look at it differently. Same thing goes like, I need to take another spin in a C6 Corvette because when I did my C6 review, it was back when I was daily driving the BRZ and I was like, man, the C6 feels so big and heavy. And I was complaining about the weight and, just the more lethargic feel of the C6 over a BRZ because I was really one of my few reference points as far as sports cars back then. Now, having driven hundreds of other sports cars, I'd probably have a different feeling on C6. So there are some where I'd like to go back and revisit for that reason to give like, okay, now I, have driven hundreds of other sports cars. I have more driver training now. I know how to handle cars better than I did, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. And I think that would inform my opinion to be hopefully better. But I think even still, I mean, those comments hold up. It doesn't drive as well as a BRZ from a handling standpoint. But, it's still a really good car, and especially these days with everything being so extra bloated and extra heavy, a C6 obviously doesn't feel heavy at all probably these days. So there's some things like that for sure. But as far as, pricing changes or things like that, I think that I don't know if any of those, because usually I don't harp on pricing too much for the used reviews anyway, because I know that that's going to be constantly shifting and these are evergreen videos that are pricing is going to be completely different depending on when you find the video and are watching it. And that's why I don't really get into competitor comparisons too much because competitors can also change depending on how all of them depreciate and appreciate over time and stuff. So it's kind of hard to really narrow down more so that is with the new stuff where it's very even apples to apples. Here's all the MSRPs kind of thing, a great question, Lantern. And Brian says, evening, Matt. You were the first channel I watched about the six-pack. Thank you. He says, since you're just under the 500,000 subscribers, why not ask for viewers to hit the hype button, which I did to push your videos? I appreciate that. So asking people for stuff also sometimes backfires, and it's, I think with the hype thing, it certainly could help. I wasn't aware that hype was available to everyone because I know when I watch YouTube stuff, I don't have that option for channels under 500,000 subscribers. So I didn't know how widespread that was. And until I know that it's rolled out to everyone, I don't want to waste valuable time telling people to hype something that they can't hype, at least not yet. So that's kind of why. But absolutely. And also the other thing too, any channel under 500,000 subscribers is eligible for the hype feature, but your points are greatly diminished the higher, the more subscribers you have. So for me to get on the leaderboard with as many subscribers as I have, it's going to take a lot of hype to get that ranked, I think. Obviously, I have more people watching, so I have an advantage there possibly. So I don't know. I haven't noticed any boost from hype yet, at least as far as the analytics side of YouTube. Maybe some of the stuff that I'm like, wow, this is doing better than I expected is because of hype. But according to YouTube, it doesn't look like a ton of people either have been able to hype my stuff or are choosing to hype my stuff, either one. So I don't know if that's super widespread yet. I think you might be one of the earlier people to have that access. Because I know they're testing it and rolling it out to people however they decide to roll it out to people. But I will say for the Junkyard channel, the Junkyard stuff is probably very great for hype because it's, again, only have 1,000 subscribers, and that could really move the needle on those videos because then those hype points are weighted much heavier for the Junkyard stuff and could really boost those really nicely. So that's really the one. If I'm going to ask people to hype, I really think that's going to be where it really makes the biggest difference. And also that would help that channel kind of get off the ground. Certainly I can use all the help I can get on this channel as well, but I'm going to keep on doing the best I can with this channel. But like, I've noticed that even as it is right now with like 1,200 subscribers on the Junkyard channel, those videos, I mean, I only post one every 2 weeks for the long form videos, but those are already on average doing better views than an average car review for me. And it's just getting started with those Junkyard videos. So I am very optimistic for the future of that channel. And I really do see myself doing that more and doing this channel a little bit less in the future, possibly. Because again, I'm going to follow the success, and then wherever those open doors are, that's where I'm going to go, so we'll see. But so that's what I would say is definitely on those ones, I'm going to start asking people to do that once I know that is out there for everyone. But I think it's going to be a while because they're slowly rolling that out, I think. And let me see. And thank you for hyping it too, Brian. I really appreciate that. And for anyone else, if you do have the hype feature, please do. If you want, you only get so many points every week, so certainly, don't feel obligated. But if you choose to hype, I very much appreciate it. And it should help in some form. And even if it doesn't super highly rank, even if it just gets it on the leaderboard and a few more people notice it, that can't be a bad thing, so absolutely appreciate that. And Darnell says, I've had a Bullet for a year now, and I can't even decide on a mod for it. It's such a sweet spot for a stock car with the active exhaust, MagnaRide, Coyote, brakes, other PP1 goodies. Yeah, and that's why I loved it, and I totally agree with you. That's why I never did any mods to it, because I think it was perfect out of the factory. And so, yeah, I think, if someone had really forced me to mod it, and I, had a sponsorship or something that made it so it wasn't insanely expensive, I think the only thing that car could benefit from is a shorter rear gear. So it has the 373s. I think I would probably put like the 410s in or whatever the next step up is. Nothing crazy, but a little bit of a shorter final drive just to make the gearing shorter, because I don't need the 160 whatever horse or 160 mile per hour top speed. Like, so I think I'd be much happier with having shorter gearing, row through the gears more, get the more impressive acceleration, under 100 miles an hour. I think that would have been fun. That also is a can of worms, though. I know some people, they swap that in, and they can sometimes have a few issues with it. And then there's the argument of, are all the other parts built to handle, the load of, the extra stress that gearing puts on everything else? So, not recommending that, but I think if that was, something that I was interested in, I think that was the only thing. I think shorter gearing could have improved that car. That's really the only thing, though. And although I will say it would have been nice to have the Tremec. So, if we're really going crazy here, pull a Tremec out of a wrecked Mach 1, throw that in there, pair it up with a 410 rear gear. Maybe would be a way to make an extra perfect Bullet, but I mean, I really don't think it needs it, honestly. And let me see. Chad says, do you think Carfax competitors like Bumper stand a chance? I feel like Carfax has the market locked down. I've never heard of the Bumper thing, but I do know that I've seen less and less Auto Trader listings that have Carfax featured, and now they all are this Auto Experian thing or whatever instead, which I don't really know much about. And there's the Auto Check. It's one of the other popular ones. It's probably cheaper, and that's why dealers are cheaping out on it. And they also don't like Carfaxes unless it's a phenomenal one because they're trying to, bury the history and tell you whatever tall tale they want to tell you about the car. And it was driven, by a grandma once a week, and she polished it in her garage, every weekend. They want to give you a load of crap. So I mean, there's probably some of that at play too. But absolutely, I think the Carfax is still. It seems to be the most thorough because it seems like some of the other ones are more vague or they don't have quite as much stuff. Carfax has, I think I don't know, and again, I'm not giving a sales pitch here, but I think they have the most comprehensive list of connections as far as body shops and people who report and pull that data, and having that size that they have, I think helps them to kind of throw their weight around a little bit to get the best info possible. But I have no idea. There might be a better competitor for sure. But I just be a little weary of stuff if you're paying for it and it's not Carfax. Your mileage is going to vary as far as, is it actually worth the savings, or should you just spend the extra few bucks for a better report? I don't know. And Decepticon, thanks for stopping by. And I appreciate you always with the fun comments there. And let me see. So, where were we here? So, see, Lantern Tales is provoking the GR Corolla comments there. And Darnell's asking, even the interior of the GR Corolla versus GTI. I mean, so cheers for more GR Corolla provoking, but so GTI interior is certainly nicer. But I think for a hot hatch, maybe some people want to have a luxurious interior. For me, the fun of a hot hatch is it's scrappy. It's not full of creature comforts. And even in my, 35-year-old self, like I don't want a boy racer look on the outside, but like I'm fine with kind of roughing it on the inside, especially if it's a really fun experience. And to me, the GR Corolla is enough extra fun over GTI that yes, I will live without ventilated seats in the top version, which don't really do much in a GTI anyway. I will live with a smaller screen. I think it's actually a perk in my opinion. I don't know. I still think people give the GR or give just regular Corollas a really hard time on the interior when it's not a bad interior. Like, it has a soft wrap, like vinyl wrap on the dash. Sure, there's some hard plastic parts and stuff, and maybe this is an unpopular opinion as well, but I don't think a GTI interior is wildly nicer. It is nicer, but is it a world of difference? Like, no, we're not talking about, Audi versus Volkswagen or something here. Like, it's not that big of a difference in my opinion. Like, so yes, like GR Corolla, absolutely, it's worth. I'm trying to think of what is actually better in a GTI, to be completely honest. You can get full leather in GTI. Maybe stereo is slightly better. Again, the screen's bigger, but that's, most people I think don't even love that. There's less buttons in GTI. So honestly, yes, you get, crappy like plastic buttons in GR Corolla, but at least they're knobs and buttons, and you don't have that in GTI. I think the big perk of GTI is you have a better hatch and you have a better back seat from a space standpoint. So GTI is more livable. That comes down to your lifestyle. And how much do you need a huge hatch? How much do you need, the bigger, more usable back seat? But that is, to me, I think the biggest argument, because otherwise I think the interior, maybe you guys see it differently than I do, but personally I'm just like, there's nothing in a GTI where I sit in there, I'm like, wow, like this is amazing. Like, it's fine, but so is a GR Corolla in my opinion. So anyway, moving on here. So Vishal says, another odd Honda decision. Why is there no CRV EXL hybrid? There's an EXL hybrid Accord. Kind of ironic. The CRV hybrids are all sport trims. Yeah, I think Honda, and that's the one thing I can kind of wrap my head around a little bit. I think the sporty nature of the extra power of the hybrid, especially I guess for CRV. Oh, there's a plane passing by. I saw it in the corner of the camera there. Um, I think it makes sense with the sport thing being performance, and I guess maybe the buying demographics just show that there's people that want that on the Accord side. Maybe they don't want it on the CRV side, but I mean, I think that I mean, I guess we'll see how RAV4 does, but I think that it would probably be smart of Honda to follow Toyota and just go all hybrid in the future anyway. I mean, they could differentiate themselves by not doing that, but I think that yeah, that's probably going to be the best way to compete with the all hybrid RAV4 now. And I see Brian is signing off as well here, so and we will be. I actually we're at the 2 hour mark here, but I'm going to try and get caught up. I think only a few more questions here, so we'll get caught up and then we'll head on out here. But let me see. Actually, sorry, I just loaded a few more comments, but we're not too far behind. I'll be concise here at the end so we don't go too far over. So Lantern Tail says Toyota does a better job, a lot better at pricing and making their vehicles priced right. They also have good pricing between Toyota and Lexus models. Yes, I agree with you for the most part. I think that they have a real problem with the trucks though right now because all the truck-based SUVs are so tightly priced together with 4Runner and Land Cruiser kind of stepping on each other's toes a little bit, and it's just so tightly packed, even with GX and everything else. So I don't know. I think that Tacoma, especially the higher versions of Tacoma and 4Runner, could stand to be a few grand cheaper, but they do some really good jobs with other pricing, like Camry. I think is priced very well. We still don't have full pricing for RAV4, so we'll have to wait and see about that one. But hopefully they do some good pricing on everything else. And let me see. Lantern Tales discussing the Seattle Auto Show there, and it also says I think Honda thinks it is a more premium mainstream brand like Mazda, but Honda is not that. Yeah, maybe that's part of why Honda does the upcharge. I mean, the only thing I will say in their defense is that CRV, it doesn't sell as well as RAV4, but they still sell a ton of CRVs, and Honda likes to make the argument, which I don't know if I totally buy it, but they claim that they're the best retail selling crossover, and that when you look at personal purchases of a RAV4 and CRV, they actually are more for CRV, but it's because RAV4 does more fleet sales and commercial sales that that's included in that is the only reason why RAV4 has the sales crown. Again, I don't know Toyota's fleet sales to say if that's truly, verifiable, but so they sell a ton of them, and people still keep buying them. I think people do find a premium that's worthwhile in the Honda. And when we're talking, a $2,000 premium over, a RAV4 or a Tiguan, or if you take your pick of anything else, okay, if it's a $2,000 difference, I think for some people, yeah, they'll pay $2,000 more for the Honda name, the Honda packaging, the reliability. Okay, fine. But whenever you're talking about, these huge price jumps for Prelude and stuff, I mean, it's just, yeah, I just don't find a way to defend it. It just doesn't seem like there's any good idea that, that should have ever been that expensive. It's not going to work. There's no possible way that's going to work. But let me see. That Tech Guy 95 says best SUV for mid 30s. I'm between CX5 and Tiguan, but worried about keeping the Volkswagen long term. Yeah, if you're worried about keeping the Volkswagen long term, which I understand that makes sense, I would say CX5 is probably going to be my favorite pick in that segment. CX50 is also very nice. If you can get a good deal on CX50, then I think that is the better pick between that and CX5 just because it's newer. It's basically the same interior space, but at least you get the nicer kind of interior and the newer interior. If you can get a CX50 for close to CX5 money. But yeah, I think a CX5 has always been my favorite in that segment. The only thing I will say, my sister actually has a CX5. I think this is a 2022. The auto leveling headlights are a little iffy. I think that Mazda took care of my sister with hers, not because of I think there's the dealer just I don't know if there's an actual service bulletin out or something, but they were telling her at one point that her headlight, the self-leveling thing broke just driving normally, like nothing she did. And there was gonna be like $1,000 to replace the headlight. And they couldn't just fix that little part. They had to do the entire headlight, which isn't a good design. So that's the only thing I'm a little cautious to recommend CX5 about now these days. But other than that, I love CX5 and I think my sister still loves hers. She's happy with it. So, and so does my neighbor. I know a bunch of people that have CX5. So CX5 is very good. I will say though too, if you are looking long term, then I would recommend possibly one of the ones with the 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty, which would mean Hyundai Tucson, Kia Sportage, and then Mitsubishi Outlander actually has that warranty as well. Between those three, I think I like the Tucson the best. I will actually be having a Sportage hybrid for a week here in a couple of weeks. So, stay tuned for my thoughts on that. If you're considering Sportage, if you're only between CX5 and Tiguan is very good. Just if you haven't test driven a Tiguan, test drive it. I think Tiguan is fantastic. And like I said in my review, it's basically perfect aside from the transmission tuning. I think it's throttle response. I don't know what is the actual holdup, but I think it's a transmission based problem. But if the throttle delay of like putting your foot down and then it goes, if that problem isn't a big deal to you, then Tiguan is very solid. It's a great competitor. I see a ton of them already on the road, so clearly it's resonating with buyers too. And it's newer. It's going to be better in all the other ways versus the very old CX5. Better, so much better space, better usability, better tech, better everything really, pretty much. I think CX5 is still a better handler, but it's smaller and Japanese and all that. So there's some of that that's going to help. But so that's kind of my consensus. Definitely, if you haven't watched my reviews, I just revisited the CX5 Turbo last year, I believe it was. And then Tiguan, I spent a week with it here in the summertime. The only other thing I will say about Tiguan, I think I covered this in the video, and is probably because the one I had was very early production, but the moonroof cover, because it does have a cover for the glass roof, a fabric piece that did like fall apart and it was like sagging. So again, probably just mine, and that's something that would be covered under warranty, but it just even that one having that doesn't give me a ton of confidence that is a well-engineered part. Even if it doesn't break immediately, like would it break after that warranty period or something? I don't know. So I still have a little bit of reservation with Tiguan. So I agree with you about your concerns there. So I think safer bet would be a CX5, but again, that headlight thing could be an issue that you have to worry about too. So there's lots of others. Again, in those reviews, you'll hear me discuss the competitors and the pros and cons of the competitors as well. There's so many, and I could go on for an hour about all that. So I won't, and it's hard to do that off the top of my head anyway. So lots of good competitors. Check out those videos if you haven't already. Hear my thoughts on the others and see what sounds like it's the best fit for you. Feel free to also reach out if you have any follow-up thoughts. And the one other plug I will say, since I haven't plugged it yet tonight, I do car consulting on my website now, mattmaranmotoring.com. If you want to have a one-on-one video call with me, there's a shorter one for those who just need a little bit of quick chat, and there's a longer one for people who really want to deep dive and want me to kind of research for them what would be the best fit for them. There's a questionnaire you can fill out and give me a ton of context as far as exactly what would be the best fit for you. And the clients I've had with that so far have very much appreciated that very hands-on kind of approach. So definitely check that out if you're interested. But feel free to also send me a message, email, whatever, and happy to chat there and help you find a car you'll love. Chaotic is asking thoughts on a new Camaro EV. I don't think they're going to do that. I think if anything, what you will see the new CT5 gas Cadillac that they've confirmed is going to continue on here. If there's a new generation of that, I think to spread costs out with that, especially now we don't have CT4 to share the cost of that platform with anymore. I think that they will do a 4-door Camaro gas. That is my bet. I don't know anything. I just, that's based on, the way things are going right now. I think that's kind of the smart approach. Now they might try and do a multi-powertrain thing. Like I think Cadillac, they are doing an electric sedan, it seems, because there was one that was kind of leaked there in the studio or whatever. So I think they may do the same thing with Camaro, possibly, where you have CT5 and you have electric sedan, whatever they call that thing at Cadillac, and then you have gas Camaro 4-door, and then maybe a Camaro EV or something that is also going to give you choice. I think choice is what people are going to want, and I think that's what to hedge the bets because of the instability of the political climate in America. It's like you can't put all your eggs in one basket, so you got to have everything for everyone, even though that's more expensive and a bigger pain in the butt. I think that's the only safe way to proceed for most of these car companies, is you got to hedge your bet in every possible way, because you don't have anything to count on anymore like you used to. And anyway, let me see here. So Outside Center is hoping the Prelude flops. And I mean, I want a car to do well. I never want a car to do badly, but some of these, they seem like I set them up for failure. And Lantern Tail says, with people paying insane amounts of money on cars, I think Honda is testing how much they can get away with. There's some of that, and I'm sure, again, first model year, I said this about Z. You have all the blank check buyers that just want it for whatever. They pay the markups, and because there will be markups on Prelude as well, which is what's going to make it really bad. That 43 grand is going to most likely be 50, 55, for those real first people that have to have, the first one on the block. So I think, sure, for first year buyers, great. But, it's really hard to go back on that if you don't want to piss all those people off down the road. So you have to stay at that high price point. So sure, you cash in the first year, but then what do you do after that, And also, sorry, Jordan, I missed your other super chats here. I apologize. He says, Honda Insight or Clarity if you had to choose. I'd probably say, well, if we're talking new Insight versus the Clarity, I'd probably go Insight just because it's a little bit newer. But Clarity, I think, is really interesting. It's a really nice driver. I actually did a quick little drive it on Clarity a while back. And it was, a very pioneering thing with having, again, all the options. You have the hybrid, the plug-in hybrid, and the EV version. And it was comfy. It wasn't, very exciting to drive, but it was a nice commuter kind of car. So I think Clarity deserves more credit than it gets, honestly. And also, Jordan's asking, do you think that tow trucks could become autonomous in non-wreck / emergency situations? Photo submissions via insurance apps before pickup. I mean, if we're talking about like just a car that broke down, but it's not an emergency or something like that, possibly. I think we'd have to get to a point where every car has a kind of universal towing point. I think that's really tricky because, if it's something where there's any variability, having the intelligence to like properly put stuff on the trailer or whatever, or the flatbed, and, hitching it upright and not breaking it and stuff. I think that's one of those things that just robots aren't very good at doing. Someday, I'm sure we'll get there, but, certainly not anytime soon with how you have, just the terrible robots that can't even load a dishwasher decently well yet. It's going to be a while, but eventually I think, it'll probably be something that'll happen in the future. Thank you, Jordan, for the super chat again. And all right, so let me see. Last few questions here. B. Mitchell says, actually, it's DRLs that have emboldened the literal dimwits who don't turn on their lights at night and in the rain, yet my Mustang does both automatically. So that is a good point. You're right. The DRLs do throw a lot of people off because, especially some of these cars, the DRL is just a dimmer headlight. Like Subarus, a lot of them go cheap and just like have the headlights on all the time, but not on their full setting. And yeah, that throws a lot of people off. You're absolutely right. I think that's a big problem too. And B. Mitchell says YouTube claims intelligence. Yeah, I know it's definitely a far-fetched thing. The algorithm is not intelligent, that's for sure. And Danny is saying hello. He says, only able to drive Thursday. Went into New York for the day and saw some interesting cars. 3rd gen Infiniti M45 and Kia Niro Taxi. Yes, New York City uses 1st gen Niros as taxis. They also use NV200s. Yeah, I've seen all that in my, because I was in New York for the auto show back in April. And yeah, that's cool. But awesome. You have to see the M45 too. That's got to be a rare one for sure. And Nightbreaker says, question, are you replying to people on another platform besides YouTube? Nope, just on YouTube. I'm only doing these here on YouTube. so I don't do dual streaming like maybe some other people do. And Lantern Tail says you should do another channel where you rant and show your emotions. That would be hilarious. Yeah, well, I think it has been something I've considered in the past. But seeing how David Patterson's had pretty good success with doing the rants on his main channel, I think that would be something that I would probably just experiment with, just doing it here, because I know a lot of people, probably are still hanging around from the weekly update days and would probably appreciate some rants here. So I think there's space for it on this channel. If it didn't go over well on here, then sure, I could do it on a new channel, because the rant stuff is easy. Because I mean, that's why David's doing a bunch of them, because he can sit in his office and just do a tiny bit of research on something and then just go off and get a ton of views. And I mean, this Prelude is a prime example. If that is actually the press, I mean, unfortunately, maybe I'll have to download some of this live stream since I'll get my first true reaction for that Michelle brought up for us here. But if that is truly the news, and I don't know how fresh that is, but if that is something like tomorrow, I might just throw a video up. And because I've been wanting to try stuff like that, especially if it's high impact, high controversy kind of stuff. That absolutely could be the way to have my Matt Marants. And I think that's what I would brand them as. I think someone actually suggested that a long time ago. I think that's the way to do it. So I may do that, but I appreciate that. You like the rant thing. And I think that is certainly something I need to explore more, just again, to boost views and just again, low effort stuff that still should get really good views. Because I think one thing that I've never, and I'm sorry, I'm so far over on time, I will wrap this up soon. But the one thing I don't think I've ever fully appreciated on YouTube is that there are a lot of people, and I noticed this even with the Charger video this week, there's a lot of people that it's clear by their comments and their questions that they haven't watched the video at all. I mean, there's people who are like, well, make it all-wheel drive and then I'll buy one. And it's like, okay, you know nothing about this car, and that's fine. That's why you watch the video, so you can be informed. But then they didn't watch the video. Otherwise, they would have known it's all-wheel drive. So I think there's truly so many people that they see a thumbnail, they see a title, they click in, they share their 2 cents. Maybe they watch a snippet or something, and then they leave. But they leave a comment. They want to just tell the world this is a stupid car or whatever the case is. And leave. And it's truly like a forum. It's like a Reddit post. And the video is irrelevant. It's just title and thumbnail and the topic. And people are just in the comments just discussing the topic and completely ignoring everything I say in the video, or muting it immediately and just going off in the comments because they want to just talk with a community of people about the topic at hand. And I think that, leveraging that more and worrying a little less about the actual video content sometimes. I mean, that's still important, but I think with these, topical things like a Prelude pricing video, it's just, I can say whatever I want to say, but it's just a place for people to be a dumping ground for all their comments of their rage and venting it out and having discussion and all that. And I think that's an undervalued thing that I need to place a higher emphasis on, of just let's just put up a forum post essentially with this, then that's all the video has to do. And it still gets a bunch of views and, is a help on the channel there. Anyway, let me see here. I appreciate the suggestion, Lantern Tales. And yeah, that may actually be something that happens. Chaz says other channels do car meetups. You could do junkyard meetups. That would be fun. Maybe that's something I can coordinate with Pull Apart someday. Yeah, the thing that I think also discouraged me on car meets a long time ago is just the fact that the few that I did, because I even did them with other YouTubers, because I would do them with these Shell drives that we would do and stuff like that. And we did them for SEMA. We do meetups, and that was an area where I had, a lot of people that are probably car people all in one place at SEMA, and they still didn't get a ton of attendance. Now others do get very good attendance. Chris Fix was at SEMA, and every year people show up in droves to see him and meet him and stuff. But actually, when I was at the Shell booth, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago for SEMA. And I actually had like a scheduled time. I'm like, and I posted on my Instagram story, like, hey, I'm going to be at the Shell booth. Come say hi and, hang out and, chat. And I mean, like, I think I got like maybe 3 people over the course of an hour or something that like stopped by and said hi. I mean, I was appreciating that, 3 people chose to, stop by and say hi, but like, you know, I haven't had great success with meetups. And especially if you're talking about something in a certain part of the country where it's just a random place and not, something that's anchored around a car event like SEMA or an auto show or something like that. I don't feel like it would be a success. And that's a lot of work to do too. And to do all that, I mean, it's always fun to meet anyone, but like, if it's going to be a whole big thing and 5 people show up, probably not great. So I think I would need this channel to probably be a lot more successful again and like get back to like even these live streams. We used to have 100 people in these live streams. And I'm sure I've pissed off the other half with my comments on politics or cars or whatever the case might be in the past, year here. But even these aren't as popular as they used to be. And so it's not heading in the right direction. So that doesn't give me confidence that people are going to show up in person to say hi either. So I'm just a realist about it. I wish that would be a successful idea. I don't envision that, being worth the effort, unfortunately. But someday, and maybe again, if there's something I can do with Chris Fix and others, and I kind of just piggyback off that, and a few people that are there to see him say, "Oh, hey, cool, I remember you," and that kind of stuff. Maybe something like that could make sense. But doing anything standalone, I think, is just going to be a recipe for failure. And Jordan says, as far as YouTube revenue, is it a nightmare when it comes to filing taxes versus Chad and I filing for our McDonald's and Whataburger jobs? Thanks for the lives. Well, thanks for showing up. And it's definitely tricky. So it's, 1099. So, I got to track all my expenses. I got to, make sure that I'm paying in advance, and there's, estimated tax you're going to pay and all these things you got to do. And it's definitely a headache. I mean, it takes me usually at least 2 to 3 days to do my taxes of like full, like from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. or, into the evening, just like doing just that. It's so funny because like I still use TurboTax because there's not enough accountants near me who understand how to like do taxes well for a YouTube person, especially automotive YouTube, where there's other things with writing off cars and all this stuff. And I've just done it myself for so long. I just keep doing that. But the TurboTax is always like, your taxes should be done. Now they have an estimator. They're like, oh, it'll take 2 hours of your taxes. I'm like, that's funny. And it's instead it's like, 20 hours or whatever it ends up being of doing that, just because again, there's just so much stuff to keep track of, and receipts I got to pull out and add stuff up, and I got to take deductions for a portion of my phone bill, a portion of all of my bills because I have a home office, and so a portion of every single utility I have, and a portion of all these things. And every time I sell a car, there's okay, well, how much of this depreciation can I take and how much of it can I not take? And there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. It's absolutely an absolute nightmare for sure. And I wish I could find someone again that could do it properly and didn't charge me an arm and a leg to do it. But anyway, and Chad says, if Amazon has a plush knee cushion for car interiors, it'd be a perfect Christmas present for you. Absolutely, because that is the sign of a premium interior, is a nice little plush knee cushion there on the transmission tunnel. That's funny. And let me see. Lantern Tales, reminding us it's time to wrap up here. And Danny says, night, everyone. Couldn't stay long. School tomorrow and got to get up at 6:15 in the morning. Yippee. Well, best of luck with the week of school here. At least you have the fall break coming up soon, and have a great week, and hope everyone has a great week here. I see Nightbreaker says thanks, and Chad as well for doing these. And I see Helio saying there's no audio, so maybe we're dropping out here at the end anyway. But anyway, thank you all so much, if you can hear me, for hanging out here. Hope you all have a great, happy, healthy, safe week. And I will see you guys on the next one on Wednesday, and for the 1 hour live there. And stay tuned for, again, more good reviews here this week. It's going to be some trucky stuff here with Fords, but stay tuned for all that. And thank you all so much. Stay warm out there if you're in a colder area, and have a great week. Take care.